22nd, 2011, and it is after 7. So I'm going to call the school committee meeting to order. This is a business meeting. So if we could start off with, we usually have the pledge of the flag and then the roll call, correct? Okay, it's just switched around. So we will do the pledge of the flag first and then the roll call. So everyone can stand.
Mine says right there, pledge and roll call.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Why would my agenda be different than theirs?
Lorene, if you could call the roll.
Electronic one has it. Linda Avanzato. Melvoy Benson.
Here.
Larry Cerisi. William Mudge.
Yes, here.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Joe Thompson.
Here.
Richard Welsh. Julia Held. Here. Student representative. Thank you.
Lorene, if you could do the calendars, please.
November 24th and 25th, Thanksgiving recess, schools and offices closed. December 8th, Consolidation Committee meeting, 4:30 p.m., Central Administration Building. December 12th, CLAC meeting, 7 p.m., Central Administration Building. December 12th, Budget Subcommittee meeting, 1 p.m., Central Administration Building. This is an addition to your calendars. December 13th, School Committee work session, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School cafeteria. December 16th, Policy Subcommittee meeting, 10:30 a.m., Central Administration Building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just mention it's going to be a consolidation meeting next week sometime?
Do you know what date that'll be?
No, I expect it to hopefully have it tomorrow, and I'll get it to you.
It's not December 8th?
We haven't completed the poll yet. No.
Okay.
No. Well, we may have one then, too, but we're going to have one this week, too.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Auger, I'll turn over the presentation to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I want to put in front of you tonight a proposal for telephone service. This is where we are getting to the point where we're at the end of our current contract for phone service. We are currently contracted with Verizon, and this is a pretty significant contract, as you can imagine, considering all the phone service that we have in our system. So I have Rich Booth here tonight to talk about what our proposal is. As you all know, there is some language around and recommendations from the recent ELERT study concerning our phone service. So we will address the issues raised in the ELERT study as well as we go through this to keep you informed about that. And just so you know, as Mr. Mudge just said, it sounds like we're looking at another consolidation meeting next week, but we already have one on the books for December 8th, which is before we meet again. So I'm not asking anyone to take a vote tonight. What I'm asking for tonight is just to listen to this presentation, and that will give us 3 weeks before our next meeting to consider this proposal. And it will also give us time to have that consolidation meeting, get feedback from that group before you come back in 3 weeks to take a vote on this. We need to take a vote on the 13th because on the 18th of December is when the current contract is up. So at that point, the rate that we are currently used to would go up significantly, probably in the range of doubling by the month until we make a decision as to, renew the current contract or to go with something else. So it's pretty important that we move now. I'm going to ask Mr. Rich Booth to come on up and talk to us about this proposal. He has a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint that I put in your packets, everybody, has been updated a little bit, and it is in front of you on paper. And the updates have to do with our responses. We did contact the town about this. We contacted Mike Embry and Jason Albuquerque and asked for some feedback from them. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And we'll certainly take some questions tonight, but I'm going to ask that you hold off on a vote until December 13th.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight and giving me the opportunity to give our perspective on our phone contract. We'll start off with Voice over IP, or you hear everybody talking about VoIP. There's Voice over IP, which is Internet Protocol. And the first thing that we all hear when we talk about Voice over IP is that VoIP is free. Well, that's very far from the truth. There's a lot of costs involved in there. Hardware, maintenance, licensing fees. There's all kinds of costs in there that people don't think of when they say, just because it's on the Internet, it's free, because the Internet's free. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Life cycle of I have here 10 years for the life cycle of a typical VoIP system. According to the Elliott study, it's actually less than that. It's about 5 years. So you have to keep up with the current technology, which is very expensive to try to keep up with the new operating systems and the new call processors. Excuse me. Survivability requires that we have call processors at every school, which further adds to the additional cost of a VoIP system for the school district. It requires dedicated support personnel. It also requires annual licensing fees. It requires special voice terminals. So if we were to switch over to a voice over IP system, we'd have to replace every phone in the district, which is about 300 phones. And if we go by the numbers that the town just recently gave us, that amounts to about a $30,000 investment for the school department. I actually think it would be a little bit higher than that, but I'm going with the town's numbers, and that would be an additional $30,000 that I'm not advocating that we spend at this point. And it also requires a maintenance contract so that if the system does go down, that the outage is at a minimum. Going on, the town also mentions that we have E-rate availability for the voice over IP system. We have two types of E-rate. We have Priority 1 and Priority 2. Priority 1 is pretty much a guarantee that everybody's going to get that applies for it. It's only for schools and libraries. Priority 2 is poverty-based, and it depends upon the level of poverty that your school district has and how far down they have funding for. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at it, typically North Kingstown doesn't have high enough poverty level to qualify for Priority 2 funding. Under Priority 1 funding, you'll see that we have local phone service, long-distance phone service, cell phone service, T1 lines, DSL lines, paging, email, cable modems, and web hosting. We currently take advantage of that, and we get about $80,000 and $90,000 a year back from E-rate on that particular Priority 1 class. On Priority 2 class, you've got phone system servers, cabling, circuit cards, access points, which would be stuff that we would need to buy if we were to invest in a voice over IP system, whether the town hosts it or the school department hosts their own system. That is not a guarantee that we would get any reimbursement on that whatsoever. So that's another thing to keep in mind when we're considering the cost of going to a VoIP system or staying with our current architecture. If we look at we're missing a slide in here. And that was the most important slide there was. Let's see if I have it. There you go. They're backwards on the sheet. If we look at the VoIP comparison from Elliott's, the Elliott report, and they're referencing specifically Table 3.5.1, you'll see that they talk about if we keep our current system or we go to a expansion of the town's VoIP system. And they say that the capital costs for us to keep our existing system would be none. It wouldn't cost us anything to stay where we are. The town, conservatively, would be $237,407 to go to expansion of their system to provide us with the equipment that we need to continue our phone service here. The annual telephone network costs would be about $37,400 after E-rate for the school department and about just under $10,000 for the town. Maintenance costs for us to keep our current system minimum. It would just really be internal line repairs and phone repairs. The town would be about $10,000 worth of maintenance costs yearly. 5-year costs would be $187,000 for the school department and $327,838 for the town, if the town was to host our IP system, our IP phone for us. Labor involved in the school department to update or keep the system up to date is none, because it would be a hosted system that would be, our service provider would hold the system for us, and they would take care of all of that. And the town would require, if we went with the town system, it would require labor of at least 4 hours per week. And then down the bottom it says here, when you compare the cost of Centrex to a VoIP system, it is dependent on how it's configured. The district currently has it configured in a cost-effective manner. That is from the issues resolution log, direct from Eller, saying that, currently now we are doing a good job. The pricing and the way that we have our phones configured is doing a good job. Okay, if we look at what the VoIP cost comparison would be, Verizon, if the equipment that we need for Centrex, zero. We wouldn't have to buy anything. If we went to the town, it would be at least $150,000 over a 10-year period. And then we also, we talked to Cox, and the Cox Voice Manager service that they offer, I'll talk about that in a little bit. That's also no investment for us. The licensing fees, Centrex zero. Town would be about $5,000 a year. Cox Voice Manager, none. Next line, this is the big one here, lines, telephone lines, PRI and POTS lines, which is Plano Telephone Service. For Verizon Centrex, it would be about $56,000. This is prior to our E-rate funding. Excuse me. The town lines would be $36,000, and the Cox Voice Manager would be just over $57,900. The voice terminals, if we were to go with the town, it would be $7,500 to buy voice terminals. I think that's a very conservative number. We'd have to buy no voice terminals looking at a Centrex or a Cox solution. E-rate reimbursement for Centrex is about $25,000, as is for a little bit higher than that if we went with the Cox because of the price difference. And the town service, we'd get about $16,000 back. All in, you're looking at an annual cost of $30,910 for Centrex, $47,300 for the town-hosted VoIP, and a $31,848 for the Cox solution. I don't know if you can see down the bottom. There are some notes down there. Green color indicates it's an E-rateable item. 10% per year for equipment purchases were used, and we used a conservative figure of $150,000 for the equipment to go to VoIP. However, per the Ellert study, they say it could be as high as over $500,000. Okay. VoIP comparison, $47,300 annual VoIP cost. Does not include energy costs to operate the equipment, technician repair time, training costs. It also doesn't include downtime, which is limited only by support skill, the parts availability, as well as technician workload. And VoIP features are not justifiable at an additional cost, in my opinion, for the school department. We just don't need them if it's going to cost us a lot of money. There's just nothing there that warrants spending that kind of money. Okay, so now, what ifs? If we extend our voice service to the town, we will relinquish any control that we currently have over our phone system, which means we'll be stuck having to go to the town for any phone problems that we have. Changes, adds, repairs, etc. will be done by the town, and what nobody's talking about is billed to the school department. Okay, if the town decides to upgrade in 2 years, will we be forced to use our budget that we may not have at the time to continue on with an upgrade that the town has planned? What SLA will the town offer the school department? SLA is service level agreement. And what that means is, what happens if the phone goes down? How long can we expect? I know with Verizon and with Cox, I know I have an in-writing contract that says your phones won't be down for more than 4 hours, and if they are, here's the remedies that we can take as a result. With the town, if the town loses the VoIP system, or car hits a pole at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, next day, will the schools have phone service or not? I don't know. Nobody's talking about that. So,
Did you ask them?
Sorry?
Did you ask the town that question?
Yes, they've seen this presentation. They haven't responded to it. They haven't responded to that particular question. Okay, our recommendation is we've evaluated Verizon, we've evaluated the VoIP whether we host it ourselves or we have the town-hosted VoIP service, and we also evaluated Cox. I'm recommending to you that we switch from Verizon to Cox Communications, and the reason being is Cox Communications has a service called the Voice Manager Service, which is a brand-new service that they've had. It's been out 3 or 4 years now. It offers the school department the VoIP-like features without the investment in the infrastructure that we would have to do. To go out and spend $300,000, $400,000 on switches at this point, we're trying to scrape every nickel we can together, and to go and advocate that we need to spend $300,000 for switches doesn't make sense in my book. If we go with Cox, we have the choice of we have all the VoIP features, and I'll get into some of those features, without having to invest in a new infrastructure. And then we can go as time progresses. We can go a little bit at a time and do a portion of our network every year instead of having to go one giant upgrade and a huge bill to the taxpayers. So if we went with Cox Communication, we would get voice over IP features without the cost of our overhead. Like I said, the Voice Manager excuse me. The Voice Manager platform has been 3 years on the market. They have a lot of very, very diligent staff that knows what's going on with it and can support it. We have 24/7 support with them. We have a 4-hour service level agreement. We get detailed billing on our calls, so we know who's getting. We can narrow it down to, how many calls are going to Stony Lane, how many calls are going. So we have very detailed billing that we can get. We have the 4-hour service level agreement, which is key, that we don't have any outages for more than 4 hours. We make use of our existing desk sets. We don't have to go out and spend $30,000 on new phones. We can use the existing phones, the existing wiring that we've already got. All support, repairs, and updates are the vendor's responsibility. My staff doesn't have to take any time, or the town staff doesn't have to take any time to do software upgrades, hardware upgrades, maintenance, break fixes, and all that stuff. It's all handled by the folks at Cox. Oops. Okay, key features of VoiceMan. I'm going to go through this really quick because it's all in your packet there, and it's also available on the Cox website. But we got business continuity advantages. We got call forwarding for all calls for each user, simultaneous ring. So if somebody has multiple offices, as now we've consolidated jobs, people are in different offices, their phone can ring at all the different offices. So if they happen to be working in the business office instead of the maintenance office, they can still answer maintenance calls and business office calls and the same thing. We have remote access to manage calls. So in the event of a blizzard or a bomb scare, we can't get back into the building, we can change messages, we can change where phones ring. If there's an outage in the area, we can pre-schedule. The main numbers of the schools will go to cell phones or to different schools. We can have a rotation for that so that the phones just won't ring into voicemail if there's something happening. People can be in control of where their phones are going. Auto attendant, which I'm also recommending that we use, is by doing an auto attendant, we can have one number for the school department. We can advertise one number in the phone book for North Kingstown School Department. Instead of advertising for each school separately, we can cut down our directory advertising costs. We have one number. You call a number. It says you've called North Kingstown School Department for such and such a school. Press 1. For such and such, press 2. And then they can follow through the menu and get directed to the right person that way. That will save us on our directory advertising costs. Unified messaging. Key personnel can actually receive their voicemail messages by email, and they can listen to them in their email, which is a real neat feature. Instant call group can be, just people that you can program a group that would get a call by dialing one number. Time schedule. After work hours, the phones can automatically be switched to an on-call person, so that Ned had expressed an interest in this feature, that his maintenance people, when they have the night maintenance people come on, their phones can be, the main maintenance number can be programmed over to their phone automatically, and that would happen at a predetermined time each night. Find Me, Follow Me, which is another feature. It'll just ring around. It'll find your desk phone, your home phone, your cell phone if you want. Remote office, if you want to work from home, you can actually set your phone up so that it'll work from home, and it would be transparent to the end user. Call forwarding, if you're not reachable, you can have it report to a clerk or to another person covering your extension if you happen to be busy. And you can set call restrictions to limit who's dialing what numbers, so public phones can be restricted from dialing Guam, for instance. Here's a quick schedule of all the different call features. For the most part, most of our users would fall into the basic category. There would be some high-end users that would probably go into the advanced. I don't think we had anybody that fit into the complete category. But so the pricing was pretty much based on the basic category, with I think we planned on 20 people being in the advanced category. And then finally, any questions?
All right.
I just wanted to let you know that I do have two gentlemen from Cox here this evening. I have Brad French and Mike Calabro. They also are here to answer any questions. And one of the key benefits of having Brad and Mike here is Brad actually sold us our switching network 10 years ago. He also sold the town their VoIP system. Coincidentally, Mike Calabro just joined with Cox. He used to work for Rynet. Mike knows our network inside and out because he was here supporting our network when he worked for Rynet. And he also knows the town network because he's done some work on the town network. So if there's any two people that I could have picked that know our network, both sides, these are the two. And they're here if you have any questions for them, if you want to step up, and if you have any questions or feature questions or anything like that, that's why they're here tonight.
All right, Mrs. Benson.
My question is for you. You kept mentioning the phone system. Will this be a complete IT system for the school department? You didn't touch on that. I made notes of that.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Okay. You constantly use the word phone, which I interpreted as telephone.
Correct.
You never mention whether they would be the carrier for the complete IT section, for the complete IT work.
Well, I'm just talking about telephones.
Well, isn't it another component to it?
Do our computers work off of the system, Rich?
No, this is separate from the computers.
Okay.
This is just for dial tone. You pick up the phone and you want to call somebody, the infrastructure that makes that telephone call happen.
Well, I'm a bit confused, and I'm not the greatest person at technology, but I thought, and correct me if I'm misinformed, and the information that I read that was in the packet containing to this, that it would be our complete IT service. That means for computers and everything.
It has nothing to do with the computers. We did talk about switching and the switching infrastructure, which would cost somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 to replace our switching infrastructure, but I'm not recommending that we do that.
Well, I can understand why you wouldn't recommend that, because we have a lot of old buildings.
That's right.
Which would require a lot of work to install it. But I think you're sly like a fox. You're not answering my question, and I'm going to be frank with you. Is this going to be the complete service for all of the school departments, not just telephone, but for the instructions that they will have in the classroom, that they will be using computers and everything?
No.
If I could jump in, I'd just repeat what he just said. No, it won't be. No one's trying to mislead anyone. It won't. This is only the phones that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, well, the question for you or him, why do you think it's necessary for us to switch the telephone service?
This particular phone service that Mr. Booth is advocating for us for tonight, it gives us all of the service that we are used to having. Our phone service so far has been fine. We have had a lot of functionality, everything that we've needed. This service actually gives us even more at the same price. We don't have to spend any more money than we're currently spending.
Well,
and I trust Mr. Booth. He knows his work,
I do too,
and
but
he's consulted a number of options here, done a lot of good research, and and I and he both find that this is the best and most cost-effective option for our phone service.
Well, I trust you and Mr. Booth,
Thank you.
and I trust the citizens who sent me here to try to get the best for the community.
Well, I'm recommending this one. This is the best for the community. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I wouldn't be putting it here if I didn't feel that way.
I have one more question.
You may ask.
Did you, Mr. Booth, consult with the town IT person?
Yes, we did. We actually forwarded a copy of my presentation that I did this evening to the town, and the town responded back with some responses on some of the things. I don't agree with all of them. Some of them have some merit to it. A lot of it had to do with E-rate funding. We apply for E-rate funding every year, and there's a lot of the E-rate funding, as I mentioned earlier, about the Priority 2, which is poverty-based E-rate.
Well, we're not a poverty community.
That's exactly right. That's why it doesn't apply to us.
For a long time.
Right. It doesn't apply to us. It doesn't usually go down to our level of poverty where they start reimbursing Priority 2 expenses, which is why if we were to go and buy servers or phone equipment and expect E-rate for that equipment, that we may find ourselves holding the full bill.
Uh-huh. Are you familiar with the word consolidation?
Absolutely.
Did you read the report of the Consolidation Committee?
Yes, I
and
did.
their recommendations?
Yes, I did.
Give me the
Excuse me,
sum.
I don't think there's really been a Consolidation Committee recommendation yet.
No, they have a report.
Let
out.
Mrs. Benson ask her question.
Well, just clarify it so that...
I'm assuming you mean the alert study.
You're talking about the alert recommendations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, not-
whatever you want to
Yeah, we
name them, Mr. Mudge.
Let Mrs. Benson ask her
On the
question.
first page of the report that we as a school committee paid our $50,000 and the town paid those for an outside person to do the evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it state on the first page?
I don't have it in front of me, so I could only guess. I don't
Okay,
know.
well, I have it. And on the first page, it states that the IT department with the school and the town could best be served by consolidation. Cox won't miss a penny because that is the carrier for the town.
Okay.
But I think instead of us taking in consideration that consolidation is going to have to come.
Well,
And let me finish, and then I'll be through for the night. I did my due diligence, and if we take this separate telephone or whatever you're peddling tonight, how many years would we have to sign the contract for?
So if I may, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
So,
you.
hi, I'm Brad French with Cox
Yes,
Business.
I think I've met you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. The way the state contract is written, we would actually go 1 year at a time. So we have a state master purchasing agreement in
Yes,
place.
yes.
And so there's no contracts like where we're asking for a 5-year commitment. The state has not written it like that.
No.
So if you decided to opt out after a year, you would be free to do so.
How long is your contract with the town since they use your service? They renew it year by year?
Ma'am, I'm not familiar with the town. I don't handle that. They're part of that service. That's handled by somebody different.
Uh-huh.
So I apologize. I don't have that answer for you.
Well, one more question for you, Mr. Booth. What is the total sum of all the figures you rattled off to us tonight?
if we were to go with the town-hosted voice-over IP system, it could be anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 for infrastructure improvements that would need to be done before the voice-over IP system could function. If we were to stay with
Wait just a minute. I want to write that down. How much?
between $300,000 and $500,000, and that's if you look in the alert study that you referred to, it mentions the costs in there. I think they use the figure of $566,000 is I believe what they use.
Okay.
If we were to go with the Cox hosted solution, it would just be the cost of the service, which would be $47,000 a year, I believe it is.
Well, you had in your report a lot of costs, different things. And I'm very familiar with Cox. I was in the General Assembly when they first applied to become a vendor in the state. And that's why I asked that gentleman, how long would the contract have to be?
Yes, I think I answered.
It's the same with that Verizon.
Would you repeat that answer?
Sure, it would be a one-year contract.
1 year contract.
I mean, the state MSA states that you can opt out of your contract pretty much almost at any time. I mean, there's no guarantee that you have to give us for 3 years or 5 years.
Okay.
So,
But I want to leave this one thing, and then I'm going to hear what the other members have to say. Were you aware of the fact that consolidation is just sitting outside the building here, outside the building up on Smith Street, outside the building on Main Street? Because we are going to have to do it one way or the other.
Well, I would ask you, Mrs. Benson, does it make sense to consolidate a phone service, and that's what we're talking about tonight, if it's going to cost us $500,000 that we don't need to spend?
I would say no.
Okay, Mr. Mudge and then Mrs. Avanzado.
I got to finish answering
All
him.
right, sorry.
I would say no, but I respectfully disagree with you on that premise. First, it's phone, and then it will be the entire IT program. This is just the forerunner of having separation instead of consolidation. I'll leave that with you. And please read the consolidation report, because our vice president was on the committee that worked out the plans.
Mr. Mudge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Booth. As you know, the Consolidation Committee, which includes IT, and which they're looking at the entire, like Mrs. Benson said, the service of voice, of telephone service, of network servicing components, and all those things into one integrated system. And this is a unique but separate just for phones, which means we still have, the networking and the computer lines and so forth and so on. So that's all got to be brought together, and I think that's what the goal of the Consolidation Committee was. There was a report that is still being worked out, and I do have here's a preliminary copy of all the questions that have been presented, which I addressed, and hopefully this will be subject to the meeting we have this next week, and we'll go through all these individually to see what we have when we integrate all of our requirements and what the future requirements will look like when we view this from a macro standpoint for all the integrated services that we think it should be integrated and we need. So I'm not going to get into details, but I would, and we'll save that for next week's meeting. And as you are aware, that I have contacted the Charlie Stam, this town representative on the Consolidation Committee, to have this meeting next week, so the entire Consolidation Committee can look at this and make a recommendation as well. Given that, I think we need to look at consolidation, consider that, and consider this in respect with the consolidation efforts and the long-term cost, and I say long-term, life cycle cost, over the next 10 years or so. You did say something, though, in here about voice over IP what-ifs, and we talk about control. And, it kind of bothers me because, or concerns me, not bothers me, that to me, whatever, you're questioning whether we'll have control with the town, and if the town upgrades this and so forth and so on, and then you talk about this, the SLA service with the town, and if there's an outage and so forth. Has there been any support that we haven't received from the town that we, in other words, for the Munis system? We work with the town supported our Munis system for years. Have they supported us in a way that affords or keeps our system and our people working? Because I know during a hurricane that they accommodated our county department and services that were required because of a loss of power or whatever. So the town was right there to support us and to help us in that area. And I'm concerned about the questions of will they be there to support us, and of course the criticality of the requirement of support, whether it's 5 minutes or 3 hours or 5 hours, is another issue.
Do you have a question, Mr. Mudge?
If the town, says they're going to upgrade something in 2 years, well, I'm not sure that's good or bad, but I don't think the town's going to mandate to the school committee to make an investment that the town council wouldn't agree to support. So that's inconsistent. If we had a recommendation, and by the way, and we had a requirement, see, because I view this whole issue as a requirement. If the town were to integrate this in the IT world with the consolidated contract, they're going to provide us our requirements. Not something they want, but something that we want. So and those are some of the questions we can talk about.
One of the things about a VoIP system is that it has periodic upgrades that need to be performed. And sometimes it requires additional hardware, additional software, additional licensing. And my concern is that if the town says we're going to do our 2-year upgrade on, and replace the servers, that the cost of the servers is going to be $20,000, are we going to get a bill for $10,000 plus the cost of their time to do the upgrades on their VoIP system?
What was the response from the town to that question?
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. Well, see, those are things that get me, because the town council is basically our boss when it comes to money. If they mandate something, they've got to pay for it. But conversely, if we need something, and if it's a requirement, then we should pay for it. If it's not a requirement, we shouldn't pay for it.
Well, by loss of control, I'm simply saying that if the town chooses to do an upgrade, we may not have it in our budget to pay for that upgrade.
Well, I guess you just missed my point but if the town comes and says, we want to upgrade this, and this is going to be a cost, we have a choice to say whether we want it or not. Just like if we contracted this out to Cox or Verizon or anybody else. We're the customer.
I don't think we would have a choice if they said we're going to upgrade
our
service.
Well, that's what you think, but I don't believe that, okay? And I'm not going to assume that we have these issues.
Dr. James?
I'd have just the reverse concern, Mr. Mudge, that we may say we want to upgrade something, but the control is now in the hands of the town, and they may say, well, we don't feel you need that. And that would concern me. Technology is a huge part, and it's getting bigger every minute of what we do in schools. And we need the control of that technology. There is nothing out there that says that the town, because they run a police department, or they run a fire department, or they do road service, that somehow they are more suited to IT than an organization that runs schools. There's nothing there. Both of those organizations need IT. Every organization, every business in America needs a robust IT department to stay on top of IT concerns related to their business. That needs to be an administrative function of this department, not the town.
I never suggested otherwise. As you recall, even in our previous conversations, we have a requirement to specify our requirements to the town, and that's the way it should work. You're suggesting that the town is not going to do its job. You suggest, look, we're getting on IT. I'm going to get off the subject, okay? But this is part of the stuff that we have to look at and will be addressed by the IT committee. The whole issue has got to be addressed together, not just phones, not just computers. And I would also say that, we'll look at their comments, okay, separately at the meeting and come back. It is the intention of Mr. Stan to give a joint presentation to the town council as well as the school committee with their IT recommendation, so everyone gets it together, and then either the committee or the council can also, ask questions and get, look at this thing. But I want to say that we've got to go forward. We've got to vet this issue, okay, with the town. And I don't want to get into a he said, she said, but we're going to have different facts, and we've got to bring this together and do it in a cooperative manner. And control is not going to be one of my major concerns, okay?
Okay, Mrs. Avanzado and then Mr. Thompson.
A couple quick questions. First, thank you, Rich, for the presentation, and thank you to the gentleman from Cox who came. A couple quick questions. Our contract that we are under now expires...
December 18th.
Okay, so that's why we're looking at this right now.
That's correct.
Not to state the obvious, but just to make it clear. I spoke to Matt Leonard today, who was on the Consolidation Committee and is still on the Audit Committee. I don't know if you know him. And he deals with phone systems a lot in his line of work, and one of the things he mentioned to me with the VoIP system, one of the weaknesses that he was aware of, one of which had to do with 911 calls. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That would be the survivability that I talked about, so that if the lines to the school went down, it has to automatically roll over to what's called POTS lines, or plain old telephone service lines, that would have to be maintained in every school anyways, so that if a 911 call was made while that school was disconnected from the network, it would still be able to reach 911 operators.
That's, I think, even another issue from the one he identified, something to do with having difficulty locating where the call's
Right.
coming from. I think it's even another issue.
Right, because of the fact that the lines are would be coming out of the town. There's, I believe it's called a Burby server. Is that right? One of Burby server that would need to be installed to let the 911 personnel know that the call was actually originating from Davisville Middle School, let's say, rather than from the town hall offices.
Okay, just a couple of comments. Obviously, I think it's important and necessary that we talk about consolidation opportunities. We've been doing it for several years, and we have come up against some obstacles with different things that we look at, different areas that we look at. One of my main concerns is, when we're talking consolidation, first of all, is, we've talked about this before, the difference between town functions, school functions, and how it might be a little better fit when towns consolidating with towns or schools with schools. But more important than that, my concern is, every single time we talk about consolidation opportunities, we talk about capital outlays on the part of the school department.
Right.
We are not being funded by the town council in our capital reserve fund. I think this is the second, maybe the third year, we got zero from them. This is why we're going out for a bond for our buildings, our roofs. We have not been funded.
That's right.
So I am really concerned in talking about spending a large amount of cash right now for equipment that we already have. And I've just seen a number of different things, and no disrespect meant to the town council, but I've seen a number of things occur, such as, we talked about IT consolidation, we were discussing it, and all of a sudden the town's building a $500,000 IT center. How is that consolidating? They spent $500,000 of taxpayer money to build a separate building when we have a building, a CD building. I'm not trying to rehash the past, but it's important to look at the way these things have been going down. In terms of the WES consolidation, I supported that idea. We voted as a school committee years ago to do that, but when it came down to it, the number that the council put on the bond initially was staggering. I couldn't support it, and no taxpayer would. And I have to question those kinds of things and why we're looking at such astronomical outlays of money. The conversation can continue, but I think we need to think about the best, most cost-effective way to do things. When it came to bus service, people may have criticized us for not going with first student or outsourcing, but we did what was better cost-wise for the community. And also in other ways, we did what was best for it. We have to think about education as well. That's another component that ties in with phones, it ties in with IT. I think we just have to make independent decisions, so I just wanted to make that comment.
My recommendation to go with Cox is the most cost-effective and the least impact on the taxpayer. It also gives the school department what they need to do their job with the phone service. It gives them all the tools that they need at a cost-effective and zero impact on the taxpayer.
Just one of my frustrations as a school committee member is every time we get some sort of a report, consultant's report, there's usually a huge price tag that goes along with it. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought we were trying to save money. I remember when Bacon and Edge came back with their report, it had a lot of great money-saving ideas in it, but it also had some major, expenditures possibilities. They don't force you to do it, obviously, but I just think that's something we have to be careful of right now.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll be the first to admit that our network, our switching infrastructure is old.
Yep.
And we have made a conscious decision not to upgrade it because the end result to the user, there's going to be no benefit to the user to do that. So I would rather spend that money somewhere else where it's going to directly benefit the students than to go and spend it on a room to have brand new flashing lights in it that we really don't need at this point.
Like another
I would love to take,
building. Yep.
to have a $300,000 check come my way to be able to replace switching infrastructure, but I don't see the need for it at this point. We have other ways to do
technically
it.
limited with that capability right now that you have for hardware?
I'm sorry?
You technically limited with the current infrastructure that you have?
The only limitation that we have is it won't support a VoIP network, which is why if we do go to a VoIP network that we have to invest that huge capital outlay. But other than that, it's functioning. There's been I have not been asked or been unable to provide anything to anybody that has asked for network services that, on our current network.
Yet
Mr.
the
Thompson,
contract
it's your
is
turn for
going
questions.
Out of business for that.
This contract that we have that's expiring on December 18th is with
Verizon.
So basically, we're changing our software company. We're keeping our own hardware. Isn't that why it's going to be a zero?
Yeah, essentially what the folks from Cox would do is they would come out and they would take the two wires off of the Verizon interface and clip them onto the Cox interface. And then all the rest of it would be handled programmatically behind the scenes at the Cox location.
So if we vote and give you what you're asking for, is the switch of the software, you're getting in certain upgrades through this program of Voice Manager,
There's no software. It's strictly a service.
a service
Yes.
from Cox
Yes.
called Voice Manager, which is
Yes.
more or less an upgrade to what you have now at the same price that you are currently paying.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And is it, if we decide in another, let's say, 2, 3, 4 months down the road, if we decide that we want to change the organizational structure, not the phones, but the organizational structure, so that the entire phone IT umbrella would now report organizationally over through the town rather than through the schools, what would be the impact of our having taken this vote on December 18th and switching over to Cox? Would we be limited, or would they be limited? If we decided to, if they said, yes, we want to consolidate, we want to take over the phone service for the schools, we will give you all these things that you're worried about, the 4 o'clock in the morning phone call, the 9/11 calls, the power outage, all of these things.
$500,000 in switching infrastructure?
Well, I'm staying with the equipment you have now. If they say, we'll stay with all that equipment, but we will just take over the organizational and the funding and the personnel and everything associated with it, is there anything in what you're asking us to go to that would prevent that from happening? Let me tell you why I'm asking that question. One of the things that gets in the way of our consolidating year after year after year is there's always just some little piece of the puzzle that was just put into place to make for separation, such as a union contract or something else, or a piece of equipment, or such as tonight, we're going to be voting on buying a brand-new truck. And so every time, there's some piece of the puzzle that prevents us from consolidating. And I just want to make sure that if I give you my vote, that somewhere 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road, if we try to move towards consolidating under the town, letting them take this whole headache away from us, then is somebody going to come back to me and say, oh, we can't do that because, and it has something to do with what we just voted on to change this over to Cox?
Well, first of all, I'm going to address the headache portion. I think what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to give the headache to Cox and get it off my plate so I don't have to deal with it. But to answer your question as far as the consolidation goes, if that's the route that's the powers that be decide to go down, we'd still be faced with the questions that we're faced with now as far as infrastructure upgrades. The switch to Cox has no impact on our infrastructure upgrades.
And what's that cost?
That's the figure that's between $300,000 and $500,000.
So you need that $300,000, $500,000 upgrade anyway.
No.
Mr. Thompson has the floor.
If we were to stay with Cox, or go with Cox, we do not need that $300,000 to $500,000 hardware upgrade, infrastructure upgrade. That is not required. If we were to go with Cox, and then, as Mr. Thompson suggested, that we are then going to be faced with switching over to VoIP, they give us, all of the things that we were concerned about.
I'm sorry, I wasn't suggesting that at all. I was saying, if we stayed with our phone system, which is currently being run by Verizon,
Right.
and you're saying, let's go with Cox, fine, let's go with Cox. But 6 months down the road, if we consolidate into the town, are we able to do that? Are we able to, then, see, to me, it's not, if I switch at my home from one company to another, I don't feel like I'm giving up control, because I don't have control of either one anyway. I've just, I call this number, and then next month I call that
I don't
number.
believe that would have any impact on it.
As Mr. Booth said, this is also a one-year contract, Joe. So, whatever commitments we get into end a year from now. And so if we need to set something up, I can't see why there would be any difference in making a move like we're looking to make right now. If we would have done it 6 months ago, a year ago, or a year from now, consolidation would still be, there'd be a lot of factors to consider along the way. This is just another one of them. It wouldn't prevent anything, but it also, I really like the idea that this is a one-year contract. It gives us more time to talk about these consolidation issues and get all the answers. I am encouraging all of you to come to consolidation committee meetings, and let's talk it out, and let's hear from the town IT and hear their interpretation of these numbers and what it means. We've done our homework. We know we've got something here. Consolidation is a great idea. It is a wonderful term. It's something that makes us all feel nice and warm and fuzzy because we know we're saving money. When we find out, though, that in this particular case, consolidating is actually going to cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, you have to be out of your mind to go down that road. The school superintendent and the head of IT are telling you, we don't need it. Save the money for something else. How can we be considering anything else? We don't need it. Save the money for something else. I'm begging you.
All right,
This is what you ran on.
Again, who?
I'm still on, right?
Mr. Thompson still has the floor, and then I'll have a couple
Thank you.
questions after him.
I got to come back, and I'll hit this one more time, and then I'll give up on it. I understand that if we go to VoIP, that it's going to cost us an extra $500,000. But we're not, is that correct? The $500,000 for the VoIP?
Yeah, between 3 and 500.
3 and 500. So what he's saying is that going to VoIP is going to cost that money.
Correct.
And I'm not going to vote for that. But what I'm being asked to vote on is to go from Verizon to Cox.
Right.
That's it.
That's it. That's all we're asking.
And Mr. French, one more question. If we decide 6 months from now that we want to consolidate and simply have everything that's already there, no further cost, but instead of it being reporting up the chain through the school department, it now goes up the chain through the town. Is that going to, do you have like a fee that we're going to have to look at, that all of a sudden $250,000 is going to be staring us in the face, or something, $100,000 that we didn't know about?
I understand your question, but no, it's as simple as changing the billing interface on it. Who gets the bill.
Good for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only question I have was just, I know that there has been thrown around in the town that there have been various conversations saying that the town would pay for some sort of a VoIP transfer.
Right.
From what the presentation you've given me here today, you're telling me that even if they pay the $300,000 to $500,000, that's still going to cost us more in terms of the monthly fee. Am I correct on that or not?
Well, no matter where that $300,000 comes from, it's still in the backs of the taxpayer. So whether the town ponies up the 300 or we take it out of our budget, it's still coming from the taxpayer. It's not going to affect our well, if we went to a VoIP system, our monthly cost would be lower if we found $300,000 of free money. But my suggestion to you is if we have $300,000 of free money, there are better places that we could put it than in a VoIP system. We can get the VoIP features by not investing that $300,000. That's, I mean, quite simply, that's it in a nutshell, is we don't need to spend that money on a VoIP system. Spend it on something else that we need to spend it on.
All right, and then the fact of the matter is Dr. Ajay said this contract is up December 18th.
That's correct.
And if we decide down the road to switch to VoIP because there's found money in the treasure in the backyard, it's still the sort of thing of that's something that's not going to happen before December 18th, before a contract date.
That's right.
That's something that's going to take a little while to take in place. So we still have this contract. All right, I know, Mrs. Benson, you have one more question, and I am going to ask that we have one last question, and then we're going to move on because we will have this on our agenda on the 13th for voting. So, go ahead.
My question is, and I'll direct it to you, Dr. O'Jay, because the question is for you. I do think I got my head on straight, and I did do my due diligence on this conversation. And yes, consolidation sounds good. But it always seemed that when we get ready to talk about consolidation, there's always that little thing that they used in Congress last night, kicking the can down the road. We always have something to kick the can down the road. Now, we can sit here and we can talk about the money, but let's face it, the town council, and I'm not relinquishing one bit of my service to the people in town. They are the controllers of the town, and we don't seem to be able to understand that. And I cannot understand, Mr. Booth, if the contract is up the 18th, why in the name of heaven did you wait to this date to bring us this information?
I'd like to answer that question, if I might.
Yes, I'd like to hear from you.
This contract was due on the 18th when we signed this contract. So it was at least a year ago.
Yes, I was sitting here.
The ELERT study, or ELERT, however we pronounce it, only, first of all, got to us with their report about 6 weeks ago. The responses to their report got to us about 1 week ago. Okay? So I can't control when the information is going to come to us from this report. It happened to come to us in November, and the first time we're actually going to have a meaty discussion about this with the Consolidation Committee is next week. This contract comes up in December. I can't change that. If we put it off, we're going to spend twice for our phone service each month while we do so. So we have done everything we can, given the present circumstance and the timeline, to deal, with what is given us. There's no ploy here to put something in last minute, to pass anything by anyone. And like I said, I put this before you. I'm giving you 3 weeks to investigate. It sounds like we're probably going to have 2 consolidation meetings before we meet again, and I ask you to vote. I want you to be informed. I want you to ask the town. I think you're going to find that what Mr. Booth is putting in front of you tonight is the absolute truth. And I cannot understand, in this day and age, where every item that comes before this board is put before the ultimate scrutiny, and we are asking all of our employees to take major pay cuts and to take all kinds of concessions in our contracts, that we would say, well, we like consolidation, so therefore, let's spend a few extra $100,000 on something we don't need.
No one
I
said
don't understand that. Now, there are parts of the consolidation study that I appreciate. I appreciate the information that came back, and I think we can use it. I also would welcome the opportunity to be given the chance to put a consolidation suggestion in front of all of you. Haven't gotten to that point yet because we aren't at the end, we haven't even met with the consolidation committee. The report is just that. It is a report. It's not a suggestion. And it's not a recommendation for consolidation. It's a report. So I'm waiting for the town, I'm waiting for any member of any committee to come forward with an actual plan. Now, in that ELERT study, it says, yeah, we recommend the town and the school department coordinate. But to do that, you need to have an airtight set of agreements about how things work. There has been no suggestion about what that looks like. Not one. So I'm waiting for that. Now, I have some ideas about how we could save some money with IT between the town and the district. I haven't been asked for that yet. And we haven't gotten to the point where the consolidation committee has met with me and asked me for that yet. When they do, I'll be happy to make some suggestions. I'm all for consolidation. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. But I think we need to be cautious. There's a lot about that particular suggestion in this report that obviously we don't feel we need. And so whether the money's coming from the town or the school department, it comes from North Kingstown taxpayers. We're asking a lot of them already. I just don't understand why we would ask for more when we don't need this. Your superintendent and your head of IT are telling you you don't need it. And I hope you would trust us and vote accordingly. Thank you.
All right, right now, nope, we have this on our agenda.
We said we all had one more question.
No, folks, we
You
have
just said we'd all have one more question. Now you're saying we're not?
We have spent 45 minutes
You
on this
just got
issue,
done saying, Madam
and
Chairman, we'd have a
we
question.
now need to move ahead
Yes, ma'am,
because we have
did
a
you
very
not
full
just say?
agenda.
Did you not just say we'd each have a final
We'll be
question?
discussing this in the consolidation committee, so you'll have plenty of time to discuss this further.
Did you just say
I
we would
like to
have
thank
the
gentleman from
opportunity to
Cox
ask one
for
more
coming
question?
here.
Opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Booth, for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We're going to
Thank
now
you.
move on to...
Now, how dare you run a meeting like this and then tell us we're going to have something
move
to say
into
and then not
citizens'
let us say
comments.
it?
Lori,
Shame on
do we
you.
have any citizens' comments who have signed up on the sheet?
No one signed up.
Okay. This is a business meeting, so this is the only time that we take citizens' comments. So if there's anyone who would like to come up and speak, now would be the time to do so.
Why did you change your mind and not let us speak?
So, seeing
Madam Chairman,
no...
point of order. Point of order.
What
Point
is your
of order.
point of order?
Point of order, the chair said that each person would have an opportunity to ask a question. Then the chair decided that that wouldn't happen. Please tell me why...
Said that we would take one more question.
Yes.
We took
I don't
Mrs.
know.
Benson's question, and now we're moving on.
Oh, excuse me, you are coy.
So, thank you very much. Seeing no citizens' comment,
Members are you?
I would now go to the, I am speaking, thank
Please,
you.
committee, please allow the chair to run the meeting, please.
I am now moving on to the superintendent's
Yeah,
report.
The doctor told me not to go.
Dr. Auger.
I don't have anything for tonight's report.
Thank you. Okay, we now have correspondence. Does anyone have any correspondence?
Yes.
Mr. Mudge.
I would like to put two things in here. I've already given this to Dr. Auger, but the committee members who weren't at the budget meeting here, I have a concern about the fiscal year funding, okay? And I could have the wrong information, right information, but I'm concerned about the amount of state aid we're getting in fiscal
Enjoy
year
a dysfunctional
12.
school committee.
Okay? Excuse me?
I think we're picking up some sound from someplace else, and I'm not really sure.
Are you recording the meeting, Mrs. Abadona?
Oh, I think it must have been Mr. Booth's mic, and I think he's turned it off now, so we're okay. So go ahead, Mr. Mudge, please
Nonetheless,
finish up what you're saying.
You were dumb like a
Discuss
fox.
I would like...
He comes up with these one-liner things like...
Hold on.
we discussed this at the Budget Committee, and I'm concerned about the amount of state aid we're getting, so I'll just put this in here. You know, we may have a shortfall, I'm not sure. I'd like to get a comment back on that. We could be as much as $170,000 short if this information is correct or not correct, okay? Also, I would like to provide, I think I did this just for discussion purposes in the future, so everyone has this, a histogram of our audit data from 1999 to 2010 regarding our revenues and expenses and surpluses. And I would just remind the committee that in 2010, we had a $2 million general fund surplus. In the end of the year, 2009, we had a $1.6 million surplus. 2008, we had a roughly $500,000 surplus. And these are all audited numbers. And I'm passing this on because I'm going to update this with the next audit. So I think it's indicative of the fact that, you know, we've had sufficient funding over the years to support the schools with the amount of surplus we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. I received correspondence from Louise Danette. She said that she wanted to acknowledge their kindergarten teachers, Kim Ferguson, Allison Chutowski, Paula Shartner, and Amy Clark for initiating their turkey trot and collecting 860 cans of food for the North Kingstown Food Pantry. So thank you to them. All right, seeing no other... Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
I just want to make a quick moment of reflection here as we come around to the end of our first year as a committee and reflecting on my first year in the seat here. I want to acknowledge all the interesting and hardworking people who served with me here at this table and also on the boards, committees, and commissions in our town and in the schools. You know, whenever I go to a meeting, somebody will say to me, "How do you like the school committee?" And I'll go, "I love it." And they just roll their eyes. They think I'm kidding them. But I do. So anyway, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the people who come out to the meetings. Not too many tonight, but thank you. And speak to us from the microphone and present us from viewpoints all over the spectrum, especially those who write serious, well-thought-out letters to the paper about town and school issues. And I want to urge you, if you enjoy public service and can find your way into it, you can be a blessing to your fellow citizens. I want to urge you to give serious consideration to throwing your hat in the ring and being a candidate for the school committee, the town council, or even a state office. And I mean for either political party, not just one, or no party at all if you're an independent type like Mr. Mudge here. Getting a seat at the table and serving on this school commission or any commission or school working group is a good first step, and then run for local office. And perhaps you might like it, and you might aspire to even higher office. It's totally engaging. It's sometimes boring, sometimes fascinating. You will never be lonely, and your calendar will be filled with events and activities. You'll go places and see things that you never would have expected, and you'll find your life enriched by the measure that you give to the people you serve. I appreciate all of you allowing me this moment of reflection, and I hope that I can encourage some of you out there to make up your minds to step up and serve the people here in North Kingstown. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have disclosure of executive session votes. Since we didn't have executive session, do we have any
This
any
is
prior meeting?
From November 8th. Motion was made by Bill Mudge, seconded by Linda Avanzato, to adjourn executive session and go into open session. Motion passed 6-0. And then we'll be looking for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of November 8th.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm going to abstain, but wasn't there a correction to the minutes?
This is in the executive session, so we're not there yet.
I beg your pardon.
All right, we're now into the consent agenda, and why don't we take the minutes in item C first, and then we'll go through and take the other exemptions, okay? There is a correction to the minutes that is in front of everybody's place, so unless there is some other issue, I would ask for a motion to accept the corrected minutes for November 8th, 2011. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, this is all those in favor of accepting the corrected version of the minutes from November 8th, 2011, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. There's also, we received at our November 8th meeting the executive session minutes from October 15th. So, but I'm going to ask that we exempt them from November 8th until the end of the meeting, because we have not had a chance to look at those. So I'm looking for a motion for pass the executive minutes of October 15th, 2011.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we need a roll call vote?
No.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
I said no.
Okay, so now with the rest of the consent agenda, I'm looking if somebody has an exemption. Mr. Thompson.
E1, F2, and F4.
And your last one is F4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
All right, seeing no hands, do I have a motion?
Excuse me, I'm sorry,
Yes.
D, please.
D.
And a C, which is the,
We've already taken care of C.
D, I'm sorry, yeah. D.
What was the other one?
D1.
E1.
All of D.
Okay.
The whole D. There's only one thing under D.
All right. If seeing nothing else, I would ask for a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so, Mr. Mudge, D1.
The financial packet here. Let me just do. The first one I'd like to look at is the, which I have here, is page 73, D1G, the athletic report. I think that was part of that. Okay. I would like to say that I'm concerned about what's reported in the budget here, and that would be on specifically page 74. I just caught this, okay? It says that our original budget was $397,000. The revised budget for athletics was $515,000. And, you know, I would like that looked at, because I thought the original budget was $515,000. Okay, now I know there's an issue on the table with respect to $50,000 cuts, but the total athletic budget, to my understanding, was $515,000 to start with, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Okay, so it was 515, so I don't know why we got the 397 in there, but nonetheless. Has there been anything with regard to the athletic, the comment that Mr. Welsh brought up about the cuts in the athletic budget for the year?
We're going to be talking about that at the next session.
Okay.
So
So
we
what
can
I'd
meet
like to do is recommend that we transfer $30,000 from the the enterprise fund for gate receipts and building fees to the athletic department, and at the appropriate time, we'll make that, when it comes up, make that motion. Thank you. With respect to, and thank you for putting this detail down with the athletic budget. I would like to go to 69, page 69, D1F. And I would like to see that report just modified somewhat, and to be, and so this is placed in three different, I think we've talked about this.
Are you still on the athletic report, Mr. Mudge?
No, this is not, I beg your pardon, this is not now on the,
Munis.
the Munis report for special revenues. It's back at page 69, D1F. Okay? And what I would like to just do is ask if this thing could be presented in the following fashion. One, to show what the federal revenues are with the subtotal, what the state revenues are with the subtotal, and what the local revenues are with the subtotal. It's been difficult for me to reconcile these things.
Is this page 69 that you're referring to?
Yeah.
The Munis page?
Yeah.
Okay, and so from that, you're asking what again, please?
I'm asking that we divide this up into three sections. One is the federally funded money, the state-funded money, and the locally funded money. And there's a reason I'm doing that, because you'll see that when our budget discussions come up. These are individual programs. We were going to have, and I thought we were going to have on the agenda tonight, a discussion about Title I, Title II, Title III. Unfortunately, that's not on here tonight. But these title programs, we'll say the first 8 programs are down here, and I think I would like to get some understanding of those title programs, but I think it's necessary to distinguish between the state, federal, and local fundings that are under the special revenue account. That's just
All right,
like
I
the
think-
rest.
I'll be happy to take a look at that for you, Mr. Mudge.
Any other questions, Mr. Mudge?
There was just one more. Sorry, I lost my place. Not included.
What page, Mr. Miller?
I'm going to, this is page, I stapled the thing here, excuse me.
Could you tell us what report it is?
54, yeah, the report is D1B.
54. Yep. Thank you.
The last in our last agenda, we had an issue here on the with fiscal year 11. I noticed it's not in here, and I was wondering, we had a comment on what the appropriated budget was for fiscal year 11. Okay, because it was like $491,000 was added in here, and I guess we'll talk about that later this week. So I'll withdraw my comment on that. So
All right.
thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve D1?
I had a question.
Mr. Thompson.
Page 56.
What report, please?
This would be D1C. And
The check register by amount.
Yep, and I'm coming back to the same thing every month, is I look at the top checks that are going out of our department, and they're going to outside schools and activities, and there's one in here for $73,000, one for $53,000, and there's another one. Well, those are the two biggest. And we received this piece of paper document from RIDE, which was just handed to us. I don't know where it fits into tonight's program, but I know that it's talking in here about some regulations from RIDE, and this was on page 15 of that packet, and it says comply with federal or state laws concerning educating students with disabilities to the greatest extent possible in the same building or classes with their non-disabled peers. A, allow for the return of students with disabilities from out-of-district facilities. B, permit the retention of students with disabilities who would otherwise be placed in out-of-district facilities. C, provide space for regional programs in a host building that houses both disabled and non-disabled students. I'm just hoping that we can be looking at these issues. I mean, as we're looking for where can we find 30,000, where can we find 50,000, here's amounts that are amazingly high amounts of money going out of our school system into other school systems, and if there's any way that we can bring those students back into our system, the money will follow the students back.
Mr. Thompson?
If I could respond, I just would like to concur. I agree with you, and I think the record is clear that we have done that in the last few years. We've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition by having, ALP programs in our district and doing lots of funding. In fact, the Davisville item that is on the agenda one of the uses, as we said 2 meetings ago, for the use of that program would be to have transition services that we currently have outside the district, bring them in the district, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars again. And Rachel is here if you would need to ask any more questions about that. So, I mean, I agree with you. So,
Mr. Thompson, the 2 tuitions that you are questioning, the 2 top ones, those are charter schools. Those are not
I know.
special ed. We have no
I know.
control over that.
I know, but the money still follows the students.
Right, but that's not a special, we can't bring them back like you can a special ed child. Those are charters, those
Well,
are...
we had talk at previous meetings about having some kind of subcommittee that was going to talk about following up on the charter school issues also.
Still on our agenda, if we can get there, folks.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Benson?
Until he brought the charter school mix in, I was going to say to Mr. Thomason that our superintendent is bringing something tonight concerning special ed, and I would like to congratulate him on that. I had my head on when I read it, and it is wonderful. And that person will kind of relay some of the things that you were asking for the new personnel at Clark Park, working with autism. That's something we cannot do anything about. Statistics have shown that they are growing more every day, and more children will be entering the school. And congratulations to you, Rachel, and the superintendent for bringing that new person aboard.
Thank you.
All right, let's, I need a motion for D1.
So moved?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor of passing D1, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, E1, Mr. Thompson. Minibus purchase.
I just wanted to have someone just speak for about 2 minutes on, or 1 minute, less than a minute, on the need for, and we're spending $63,000 on this.
I can do that.
Tell the people.
What we have is we have 2 minibuses, 1998 vintage, with over 200, probably close to 250,000 miles at this point in time. Due to the age of the bus and the condition, it's time for us to replace at least one of those units. The reason for that is once buses get to that age, into the 15-year range, they just, between parts, between rust, corrosion, mechanical issues, they just get to the point where it's not cost-effective to keep running them in that manner. So what we'd like to do is replace one of those units, use a new bus as a frontline unit, based on our experience, based on the cost, based on the analysis we did, which was also to look at gas vehicles, which have a lower upfront cost versus the diesel. You can see by the price difference, as well as the number of years and miles of service we expect to get out of the units, this is going to be our best bet to continue the service for special ed.
Are we all set with diesel and gas? I mean, the pumping facilities, the supply of, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, yeah, the school district's pump facilities are in good shape. We've got good reliability. Matter of fact, we help out the town if they have problems with theirs.
Thanks.
How many minibuses do we have in the fleet now?
I believe the total is 16. I'd have to check to see the spares. We might have one spare that's out now.
Have we considered getting vans, by the way?
Those would not.
Passenger vans?
Those can't be done for the minibus school-to-school service.
Mrs. Benson?
That is the one bright spot tonight, and I'm very pleased to see that we are getting a new bus, and it's much needed. But I would like to leave this with you, Mr. Draper. I hope that you will take apart and who the driver of that bus will be, because we have some bus drivers that don't miss a pothole in the road. And as long as there's Rhode Island, there's going to be a pothole. And get a driver use your position and work with Mr. Horn to get a person who's going to take care of the bus and who's going to be careful, because this is something we need, because in order to give the special education children the things that they need. The next question to you is, will this be equipped for a wheelchair?
Yes, it will.
Oh, good, good.
All right, so I'm looking, I'm looking for a motion for
I was going to
E1.
make the motion, Madam President.
Great, go ahead.
I make the motion that we purchase a new special ed bus and a minibus, and that Mr. Draper will consider my remarks when he meet with Mr. Horn.
I'll second that.
Yes.
You're making the recommendation for the recommended purchase in the agenda, correct?
I said I make the motion that we purchase a minibus.
Right, the
and
minibus.
The minibus.
Okay.
We need more. I wish we could get more, but we don't have the finance. And that he relay my comments and work on the driver and get a person who's going to take care of the bus as a driver and a person who's going to keep it clean as a special education aide.
Thank you.
Could I ask one question, please?
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
The minibuses,
On the floor.
You may ask a question concerning the
yeah,
motion.
the minibuses, are they exclusively for special ed?
No, if we can get efficiencies out of the fleet in terms of, let's say there's a tail end of a run, or there's something going on where we can use the minibus instead of using a regular bus, we'll do that.
Who would drive it then? Would one of the bus drivers then, we got the contract with the other buses, so how does that work out or interface?
Like I said, it would be if there was some efficiency to be gained from that. We're not going to put an entire regular ed service run, but if we've got, let's say, a neighborhood that's isolated for some reason, we'll put a person on a minibus.
That has been used before, hasn't it? In many years before. That's an old past practice, Mr. Mudge.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to, all of a sudden, maybe I can ask my questions later, but, we've got a 20-passenger bus, and I guess we've got, 16 of them? So that gives us, that gives us the capability to move a lot of people around simultaneously. So we're talking about 22-passenger buses, 220, and have to have roughly like 300 students. We need that many buses? It seems like, how many special ed
Point of order,
kids
please.
are we transporting?
What's your point of order?
We're getting kind of far afield, and the time's getting short. And I don't want to cut Mr. Mudge off, but
Could you confine your question just to the minibus purchase?
Well, I am, because
just keep it brief, maybe.
it's, how many people are we, could I ask, how many total people are we transporting with minibuses in our district?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you the total number of students we move each day. What I can tell you is, depending on what happens with the runs, we'll try to double up going to out-of-district placements, but there's a point at which you can no longer do that, either because of the needs of the student or because of the geography you have to cover. So right now, we know we need this many buses. As you can see from the list, we have 2 buses in the 250,000-mile range that do need to be replaced. We try to get every efficiency we can in terms of where we send the buses and how many we need. But I would be remiss if I didn't say, look, we've got 2 we have to replace. We're asking you for 1 right now.
And these,
beyond that,
finally, these are just for out-of-district services for the special ed?
No, there's in-district services as well as out-of-district. So these buses are serving both within the town of North Kingstown as well as around the state, depending on what the services are needed.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes. Brings us to F2, approval of part-time supervisor for physical plant. This is budgeted. Do I have a motion on the floor? F2, so there's no motion on the floor. I'll make a motion to approve the part-time supervisor.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and a second. Now for discussion. Mr. Thompson.
We had a meeting at the, yesterday of the Budget Subcommittee, and I thought I made a rather forceful presentation that I was interested in consolidating 3 different functions that the school does currently, one of which is IT and phones, one is building and grounds, and one is payroll and accounting. Somehow, Mr. Mudge informs me that my presentation didn't make it into the minutes of the meeting. So anyway, I'm looking towards the building and grounds, and particularly the snow plowing, as an area that we should be able to consolidate in the future. So that's why I'm going to state that I'll be voting no to hiring our own.
Address that?
Well, as soon as I get to the end of the sentence.
Sure thing.
That's why I'm going to
right ahead.
vote no on this particular job, and hopefully we can have a new organizational chart in the near future where that job will either be filled by someone else or I don't know how it will happen, but I'm looking towards consolidation for this function. Thank you.
This job is really a short-term, or actually not necessarily short-term, but it can be a short-term. It's basically a part-time person with no benefits. It is basically to make sure there is someone who is focused on buildings and grounds and not having it be an add-on for Mr. Draper to do this work. And so, there are other pieces of this consolidation that we have looked at in the past, and I probably will talk to you a little bit some more once we talk with ESP a little bit more about some other pieces of this. But this is still a significant savings from what we originally had. And this is the type of item, Mr. Thompson, that if we do a major consolidation move of some kind around buildings and grounds, it can easily be erased at any time. It's not a long-term commitment of any kind.
However, the motivation towards consolidation would be diminished if we had this person on board immediately. We would have Mr. Draper would be highly motivated to move toward consolidation if we did not vote for this position. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily. As I think is clearly demonstrated by the actions of this committee in the recent months, it takes a long time for something to pass around here. So even if there's a great idea, and I don't know which one it is yet, around consolidating buildings and grounds, we just haven't gone down that road. So if there's some kind of great idea to be had, I'm all ears. And I'd be happy to advocate for it once I hear it, of course, and consider it. But these things take time. And right now, we need a supervisor of buildings and grounds to take care of business. And this is the least expensive way I can think of doing it right.
Mr. Mudge and then Mrs. Benson, Mrs. Avanzato.
Well, yeah, probably the least expensive would be not funding it at all, but I guess I might have, maybe I was sick when this happened, but I don't know why we lost the full-time supervisor of our, probably $100 million facilities value, plus I don't know why whoever agreed to try to operate this thing without a full-time supervisor. I've never heard of a situation where you bring in a part-time supervisor that supervises full-time people, I guess, which is ironic. But nonetheless, somebody agreed that they could live with this situation for a year, and here we're halfway through the year, and we say we can't get through the rest of the year, okay, with some agreement that was made previously. So I, too, am going to vote against this at this point in time.
Mrs. Benson.
I was just going to ask for a little refreshing on that particular item. And Dr. O.J. is correct. It takes a long time to get things passed. But when we went to this system, it was stated that Mr. Draper would take over that job. You remember that?
I understand that, yes.
Yes, that he would take over that job, and I questioned it then about the unforeseen consequences. And for once, the messenger is still shot, but the message must have gotten, because I always felt that that was too big a job. Mr. Draper is a finance man, and to go around and see what nuts and bolts. Now the question is to you, Mr. Dr. O.J. Do you have someone in mind? I know we're going to save with not having to give the benefits and so forth. Do you have someone?
I don't have anyone in mind.
Well, I would suggest, if you wouldn't mind taking my suggestion, that we contact the retired supervisor.
That may definitely be the case, certainly. This would be the great kind of a job for a retiree, sure.
Yes, because they will not have to be in the health system.
Right.
The person would not have to get orientated to the schools and their needs. So,
And
I can't say enough in getting this person, but I am asking you with all to contact the retired. We have done that in the finance.
we will certainly be open to that, that's for sure.
Open
you know,
and answering my question is two different things.
well, I'm agreeing with you.
Guarantee it, right?
I can't guarantee that there will be a retiree who would take the job, but I would certainly encourage that to happen,
So
yes.
that's what,
Yeah.
that was the answer, because when you transfer departments and people retire, it takes the person who has been in that job to come in and work with that person, as we did
Sure.
with Nancy Shive coming back.
And I just want to say that I also appreciate your comments on, Mr. Draper's got, an extremely busy job. And he's had that job for some time, and to add more responsibilities, I just don't think works. One of the images that sticks in my mind is, we were recently had several hours where we were going through ESP negotiations, and Mr. Draper was unavailable because he had to attend an asbestos workshop. That's not what he needs to be doing at that point. He needs to be helping us with our negotiations. It's that kind of a thing. I mean, he's done great work doing this and holding things together, but it's just not the right fit. And so we need to find another alternative, and this, before we can come up with some kind of other option, I think is probably a really good option, and it saves money from the original model, saves significant money from the original model that we've had.
Mrs. Avanzado.
Yeah, just a quick comment. This is one of the kind of institutional problems we have on a staggered school committee. And just, we need to go back and look at the history of how this developed, why we lost our supervisor is we were trying to consolidate and save some money. And the place that the committee thought to go would be non-educational delivery. Anywhere that doesn't directly impact education, like snow plowing, grass cutting, those kinds of things, was what the committee wanted to look at first. And so this idea represented a consolidation and represented a financial savings. And sometimes things have to be tweaked as you go along, because you don't know what the impact is going to be on the operation and on the physical plant. And I appreciate your comments that it wouldn't get in the way of anything we may decide to do further down the road. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right. We have a...
Insight. Thank you, Mrs. Avanzado, for that insight.
You're welcome.
That
All right.
is very pertinent to the thing.
Could I just ask a question?
We have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Mrs. Lorraine, could you please do a roll call vote?
Reread the motion, please.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson,
Mrs. Benson wanted you to reread the motion.
this is to approve the part-time supervisor for the physical plant.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Item F4, Mr. Thompson. Oh, actually, first, is there a motion on the floor to approve the paraprofessional position?
That is that for.
I would like to make a motion that the payroll professional position to work with the special education department be approved.
Is a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Now, open for discussion. Mr. Thompson, you were the one who exempted this item.
Dr. Ogier, since we do not have a personnel management or position management subcommittee to ask these kinds of questions, my question to you is, have you looked at every para that you have on board in your structure today? Have you determined there's no way that you can shift duties or get coverage for this need in any other way than by hiring somebody new into the structure?
Yes, I have. It's something that whenever anything like this comes before me that I go over pretty extensively with Mrs. Santa. The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Benson.
The one question that I would like to ask, and it's very important to this position, is that person certified, Dr. Ogier?
Is the person certified? No, this is not.
There's no certification for TAs. There's just a certificate of class completion.
Yes, that's the answer I'm looking for.
So they would have that certification, yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Santos. That was the question I was asking. Thank you. Not so dumb, Dr. Ogier.
I never implied that, Mrs. Benson.
You'll never live it down.
You're a great dancer, Mrs. Benson.
Ooh.
All right.
Keep it light here. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Nowhere.
We need to keep it light.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. You know, this is something that is difficult to say in the middle of our budget that we need to take more money out of our fund balance, but we all know that this is something that is needed, and it's our hands are tied. So, you know, it's one of those things that there's nothing we can do. We have to help the student, so this is how we have to go about that. So if we could take a roll call vote, Lorraine.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
All right, that brings us to the end of the consent agenda and into the CIP future bond. I'm not sure who's going to be speaking on that.
Well, I can start. As you know, we have recently received word that our bond for $6.46 million and change has been approved by the Board of Regents, and at this point, we have been working with the town councilor or the town manager, excuse me, to move forward, and he has put forward to us the language for moving this toward a bond. So it is my recommendation that we submit this for enabling legislation. This would take it to the legislature, which is the next step in the process of getting this before the voters. I don't know if Mr. Draper might have any comment to add to that.
No, I think unless there's questions regarding what was in your packets, we can move forward from there.
Mrs. Benson, or I'm sorry, Mrs. Avanzado had her hand up first, so I'll call her, and then Mrs. Benson and Mr. Mudge.
A couple of things. I know there are grave concerns about bonds, whether or not they'll pass is a concern that we all have. And I think that we should consider asking the town council whether they would like to take the money from their rainy day fund and pay for the roof and some other necessary repairs to the buildings. I just want to remind the town council that these buildings are their responsibility. I look in my packet and I see a letter from the town manager noting that we were going to have this bond during a special election, and that since this special election would be only for school issues, they're requesting that the school budget absorb the cost of the special election. I don't even know if that's legal, and it's certainly absurd, in my opinion. I mean, it is the town's responsibility to fund us to take care of these buildings. They are not funding our capital for, 2 or 3 years in a row now. They haven't contributed to our capital fund. if the roof falls in, or someone's injured, or the building is further damaged by rain or whatever else, then the town council's going to have to answer to that. I think they have a decision to make. They can decide if they don't want and don't support a bond, then the town council can give us the money out of the rainy day fund, because one way or another, we have to make necessary repairs to the building. And I'm disturbed by that comment or that email requesting that we pay for the election costs. We had a bond go out for turf in this town by the town council last year, and we can't get a roof on our school building, elementary school building.
Before I go to the questions, Mr. Draper, could you give a quick summary, just for the record, as to, one, what is in the bond, and then two, just the procedures that we had to go to get to this point, and then three, the procedures that we go from here?
Sure. As the committee may recall, we've been through a process with the Rhode Island Department of Education where we engaged Sims Maney McKee to do a comprehensive facilities master plan for us. That master plan was developed in cooperation with the facilities subcommittee. We looked at all the buildings in the district, focusing primarily on the ones occupied by students. We then developed a capital improvement plan that would address our requirements for the next 5 or more years. Through that process, RIDE and the state developed financial concerns. The legislature actually changed the funding of the housing aid program, and when they did that, we had to revise our CIP to the most recent version, which you have before you, which is the $6.5 million. This 6.5 is actually the most critical needs as determined by SMMA, and what they found was these are code requirements or life cycle requirements because of the age of the building and the age of the components that we're replacing that need to be done in the near term. By near term, I'm speaking of 2 to 3 year horizon. There's actually a 6-month restriction on the amount of time before which we have to approach the voters and get their approval. We had to certify via our architect and our superintendent that these are high-intensity needs. We were informed by the Board of Regents that they believe, due to the financial crisis that Rhode Island is in, we are fortunate to get this. They are also concerned that this funding may not be available in the months and years to come. Right now, that moratorium is enacted by the legislature, and that money may not be available after the next session. There's no guarantees as to what might happen next. And just to sum up, I would say that the list of projects you have before you, we do have experience with ADA compliance, where we ran into some issues at the Fishing Cove School, which we've resolved. We do have issues with the roof at Davisville Middle due to its useful life. We have some other components throughout the district that need immediate attention. We don't have the financial resources to take care of those things right now. That's the situation we're in. I feel that this is the best financial opportunity for the district to get the 30% reimbursement and meet critical needs.
Okay, Mrs. Avanzato, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't finished with your comments, so go ahead and finish up, and then I'll go down the list.
Okay, very quickly. Just want to acknowledge the work that went into this process by the Facilities Management Subcommittee. I sat with them on at least 2 or 3 occasions, and they met so often, put in so much time, purely volunteers, a lot of very experienced people, and tried to whittle this down to the bare minimum. And it may not look like the bare minimum, because if you read the RIDE regulations on building, they're kind of absurd. And something really needs to be done about that. If you look at the RIDE regs, they require us to use an architect for even a roof. Not my fault. And this is something that we should add to our request of RIDE if we're going to look at talking to RIDE about charter school mandates. We ought to be talking to RIDE about some of these requirements on buildings that are tying our hands and making us spend far more than we would need to, say, to have an architect for a roof, when you don't really need an architect for a roof. But we have to by law. So it's been whittled down as far as we can go. If we can't get this bond passed, then I would like, and I was serious about asking the town council, to consider whether they'd be willing to pay for some of these repairs out of their rainy day fund. And I don't want to know what the rest of the committee thinks
You
about
want
that.
to make a motion? I'll second it.
I would like to make a motion that we send the town council a letter asking them how they prefer to handle this in terms of the repairs.
Second.
Well, why don't we
Do we
come
have a
back to
motion on the
that?
floor already?
We come back
Why don't we
to
come
that.
back
We
to that?
have a
Should I-
motion on the floor.
No.
Am I correct, Madam?
Yeah, yes, I believe we have the motion on the floor to approve the...
Oh, there's no motion on the floor. There was no motion.
Oh, okay, we don't have a motion on the floor. Nope. Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of. All right, so there is now a motion on the floor to send the town council a letter to ask about just taking this. I guess I'm going to comment that what I would say is that I think you could do that in conjunction with the bond, and you could let the town council decide, since they are the final arbitrators of if any bond goes out to begin with, but you could still say to them, we would like to go for a bond unless you would like to pay for it. And so I would make the suggestion.
Let me think. What are they going to say?
Well, I'm just saying, though, you have a time limitation that is imposed by RIDE. So if it doesn't sound like you want to do this no matter what, I'm afraid of how the town council will answer. So that would be why I would send it over there saying, these are critical needs. The roof in Davisville, while it is still there, we don't want to wait until we come up to the situation like what we have there. So I would ask the people who have made the amendment that you can still ask the town council that, but I think you ought to have the bond there for them to vote on, too.
I'd like to withdraw I agree with you,
Yeah.
because I think they need to have the option, so I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Well, I'm just going to ask you, if you'll wait until Bill has a few things to say about the whole issue, and then I think
Make another
we can
motion.
come back to that.
We can
come back
still
to it.
make the motion, if the motion has been withdrawn, is my understanding. I'm looking at Lorraine, just,
I withdrew my motion. My motion was not to pass the bond, so we would need another motion for that anyway. So I've withdrawn my motion to send a letter to the council, and we can talk about that after.
so we can still have a motion on the floor that we talk about. So if you'd like to now make a new motion, Mrs. Avanzato, you may.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we approve the bond, or sending the bond to the town council, along with a communication such as we just described.
Do I have a second on that? I will second that for discussion purposes. Dr. Ajay.
I like that idea. I think I would suggest within that letter to state something to the effect of, that we're asking them to, move this bond along to the legislature and continue the process along, but that they come up with a plan to help us this year in the event that the bond should not pass. Because we'll probably know that we have 6 months to work, so it's going to happen sometime this spring. And we really need that roof, particularly at Davisville. And so I would hope that, you only have a certain window, and that's the summer, to do that kind of a project. So if we have to wait to do this as another bond down the road, say in the presidential election a year from now, that means that's 2 summers going by without a roof. So I think I would put something kind of specifically in there to say, in the event that the bond doesn't pass, that they could have a plan to help us with the Davisville roof this year.
Okay, Mrs. Benson and then Mr. Mudge.
I'll yield my time to Mr. Mudge, and
Mr.
may I
Mudge.
speak afterward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a few questions to ask about this because it affects something I think we have to sign. But
Ask your questions, please.
Could I give a little background, please, so we understand where I'm coming from, please? Okay. Is that we have a form that was presented to us to sign that's required by this process. It has to go to the Department of Education, certifying that the school board members all have signed this thing. So that's one thing. We've already had a letter to the town, requesting authorization. So I'm just trying to look at the process of this thing. And we have a response back from the town manager, which raises really another question, is that apparently we have this bond, which I have some issues with separately, for $6 million, and then we have $2 million over here for other, monies available for Davisville, apparently, it can be used for the Davisville roof, if I missed that. If you look at page 93 or 5A1A, okay? And because I had the same question to Ms. Savantano you did, okay? Because on this roof, I think there's three alternatives from the way I understand it at this point in time. One would be to do exactly what you said and ask, okay, that we use the money, if I've interpreted this correctly, for the existing bond debt, the $2 million, okay, which is against the prior $9 million bond. The second would be this bond, and the third would be take it out of the town's surplus fund. So we've got three choices, okay? So that's the way I look at that. Now, with respect to that, I sent Dr. Auger and the town manager some information today because I am not going to sign off on the $6 million budget at this time to the Department of Education, because I do have some concerns. I have read the entire form, and I have some concerns, just like you did, about some of the things that are mandated in there. Specifically, on the $6 million bond, I have reservations on what is, and if you look at this, the letter over here, okay, that these projects, okay, are necessitated by the immediate health and safety. And I don't believe that those live up to that premise, or some of them. Some of the issues in that $6 million bond. So guess what I'm saying is I need a little more information on this, and I would like to put this off till the next meeting, because I have sent this to Dr. Auger, and I've asked him to look at some of these things, and I'm going to send it and I have talked to Charlie Stamm already, to get some support on what the council may feel about this. Now, I've done that on my own, because I am concerned that, A, we need the roof, I think. I'm not questioning that. Second of all, in this report, the roof cost went from $2 to $3 million, and I'm concerned about that, okay? So if I go forward and I go to the public and say, I want $3 million for that roof, I want to make darn sure that it's $3 million. In addition to that, what I asked Dr. Auger to do is to prepare an RFP, immediate RFP, to go out to the town like we did for the Davisville, the roofs that we did over there, okay, to really firm up the price, number one. Number two is that it gives us a vehicle, a contract vehicle. It would give us a contract vehicle Ready, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I'm listening.
Thank you. We would have a contract vehicle in place, okay, that could be prepared, and we could issue it in June, if you may, and by that time, all the paperwork would be done, the design, whatever, that process takes, like we did for the roof at the other three schools. So at that time, we could issue that RFP, make it a contract, rather, issue the contract to be accomplished the 1st of July, and then spend either bond money, either bond monies or the monies from the the town's reserve fund. So we have three alternatives. In the meantime, the design would be going along, we'd have the bid out, and we'd have an actual cost, okay? So we would then really know what the cost of, what the really monies are that are required for the $6 million bond, for example. So that's a process that we can go on with, and it's something that will not affect this bond at this time or the utilization of the second bond, the $2 million. There's too many balls up in the air here. And I think the best thing to do is go forward with that Because if it isn't $3 million, then why would we be asking the town to support a $6 million bond? It would then be maybe a $5 million bond. So I'm not sure what the numbers are.
Why don't we have Dr.,
Okay.
before you go any further, why don't we have Dr. Auger address some of this?
If I can address your points, Bill, we've talked about this a few times.
Dr. Auger first.
Even on this stage, and for your first couple of points, I trust the process that's been in place. I think we've gotten some good advice from the Facilities Subcommittee.
Haven't suggested otherwise yet.
All right, well, and so I'm happy with this. I think in every case of a bond, there's a number thrown out there that, we do have a responsibility to, call for RFPs and try to save money, even when the bond says, 6.4. If we can do it for less, that would be great. But the Facility Subcommittee has suggested this number, and the Board of Regents have approved this number, and we can get a nice discount on this number, when you look at the how the state would fund us and everything. And that's what we need to kind of get this in motion. So, but I agree with you on the third point, that I have no objection to starting along the line of getting an RFP going right now, so that, by the time people do vote on this, they might see that, even though the bond says, a certain amount, that it may come in less than that when we actually have to spend money for it, just like the $9 million bond came out. That was a bond for $9 million, obviously, and we only spent 7 point something. So, there is some savings there. So I don't have any objection to going ahead with the RFP, but I think just to get the process rolling, we have done a good job with this process. We've gone through all the right channels, and now we have something in front of us. I would hate to do anything right now, and I'm not suggesting that you're asking for this, but I don't want to do anything to slow this down right now. I think we got some good momentum, and the legislature may change at any time. We have to get this soon, because the legislature may say, you know what, we don't want to continue funding for, whether it's, at a certain rate. So I would say, let's get this rolling. Let's also get an RFP and see what the prices come in, and if we can save some money, we save some money. And people may even know that as they go to vote, that even though it says 6.4, that there's a good chance it's probably going to come in for less than that. I think that's a good thing.
May I respond, please, now?
Yes.
This is a process we're going through. And as I said, I'll support what I feel is appropriate and what we need to do, and I'll go bang on every door in town if we have to get the money. But I will not do, unfortunately, we did a couple of years back, okay, and passed a $9 million bond for 3 schools, and we included sprinkler systems in 3 schools that were not required by law, yet we were told by an architect they were mandated. And I will categorically say that was wrong, that even the town fire marshal advised this committee, and advised the architect, it was not required by law. And I'm appalled that that happened. So we spent at least, and then we closed the school 2 years later. So that's a separate issue. The fact of the matter is, okay, yeah, we probably spent of the $9 million, $3 million putting sprinkler systems in. Yeah, we got 30% back, okay, of the $3 million, which is $1 million, but we spent $2 million, we didn't have to. And all I'm saying is, I want to go back and readdress this, Dr. Auger, is because I don't believe that we have to spend $500,000, and it's mandated by law, to change the asbestos tiles at Davisville Middle School. That is not a requirement. It does not have to be done today, tomorrow, and that's what I want you to certify, okay? Plus, there are other good things in here for the ventilation and stuff that we need to do, and I agree with that. And I want to go forward with some of these things. But when I look at that $500,000 for Davisville, I'm saying to myself, that could be $500,000 of priorities we could put at the high school to fix maybe the air ventilation system up here. So I'm not going to accept somebody saying to me that they won't look into this thing, they won't certify that this is an emergency requirement. And I have asked you to certify, and I set that in a mail to you, that I want you to certify the architect. Certify that if we don't do these jobs, okay, for the asbestos tile and these other action items, that we'll be in violation of local, federal, and state law.
If I can just address that real quickly, and then if we can move on. If I were to certify that, the first place I would go would be the Facilities Subcommittee. They've already told me this is what we need. I'm not an architect. I don't know. I'd go to the Facilities Subcommittee to find out.
You better
They already
find out.
told me, you need this.
Okay.
And they have signed it. So I'm good.
Would you put your job on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Benson and Mrs. Avanzato.
I'm going to pass because I want to hear the discussion, and I have one pertinent question.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Okay. First of all, we do have the architect having certified it. Asking Dr. Auger to do so, that's not where his expertise lies. There's been a long process with Facilities Subcommittee, and I was there when the architect came, and I know you weren't able to be there, you weren't feeling well, but I wish you had been there because I know you have a lot of the pertinent questions for this. I agree with you on the asbestos, only because I happen to know that if the asbestos is in a form where it's
Non-friable.
encapsulated, it doesn't have to be removed. It's not necessary. In fact, it's probably more dangerous to remove it than it is to just leave it alone.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I don't think, though, that voting yes for this means that we stop and that we can't take $500,000 out. I won't support doing something that we don't have to do. I would definitely support your questioning that item because I think there's some,
Well, also see that the ADA thing's bothersome to me, because when I last looked at those, they weren't mandated to be done. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but as soon as we go if they're mandated or not, that says we have maybe other choices we want to spend the money with, like the high school, problem or something else. That's all I'm trying to say.
I would recommend, I'm going to vote for this bond. I have some reservations. I would like some more questions. I would like those questions and specifically to be answered. And maybe facilities management can talk to us, and we can do a little bit of research with Mary Ann on both the ADA issues and the asbestos issue,
Fine.
because I think you have a valid point on those.
And by the way, I'm bringing these questions up because I will do the same thing with the town council, okay? Because if I'm going to go forward, put my reputation on the line, when I say to the town, we need $3 million for a roof, or we need to spend $500,000, I want to make darn well sure that's needed, because we've made a lot of mistakes in the past, going back to this high school, in fact.
Agreed.
I will say that, we do give our subcommittees a lot of time that we ask these volunteers to spend. And these are folks in town who have a background in facilities management, who have a background in contracting, and it's not as if they've just gotten together for a couple of weeks. I mean, they have spent hours of their time. I respect the time and the work that they've done. And I do say, yes, I think you all have legitimate questions, but if they come back and they say to me, yes, with the questions you've asked, we asked, I'm going to accept that, because I don't sit here and report to have any authority in terms of building a building and what needs to be done. So I do want to say, let's not forget how many hours these folks have put in to this report.
Well, listen, I'm not criticizing them whatsoever. I'm not criticizing their
I'm going to give Mrs. Benson
work.
a chance to talk, and then we're
What
going
I'm
to take
saying
the
is,
vote.
let's get this certified by professional people who know what the requirements are.
And I
Because
think
we
that
went
that's what our
through the
facilities
same thing.
management
The architect
group
said
has.
before, we had to put sprinkler systems in, and we spent $3 million, and we didn't have to do it.
Mrs. Benson and Mr. Thompson.
Okay. I would like to ask Dr. Auger, what are the future uses for Davisville School? That's one question.
Which is Davisville Middle School.
We're talking about the middle school in the bond,
Yeah.
not Davisville Elementary.
Right.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mudge, you were right. We do not need to disturb the towers and so forth, but we do need the roof. Now, if I go back, I think we have discussed this roof before, and I don't think that you were coming to the meetings then. I don't know why, but maybe it was the former chief executive's idea that you shouldn't be here. I don't know how that went, and I don't want to go into a discussion about that. But we have to have a roof. Mrs. Page, you put a lot of emphasis on the time and the expertise of the Facilities Committee. Give us the same privilege, and let's do our study, because we cannot, I'm saying it again, issue bonds that we know are not going to pass. And I'm no genie, and with what happened in America, we don't even know if the state will have the money to reimburse us. So let's talk about the money from some other source. I like the idea of the letter, but I don't like some of the wording in the letter, but I'm one person. But we cannot have children sitting in school with raindrops falling on them. Now, everyone knows that. We cannot have them sitting in school with raindrops falling on them. And I want to know, and if you were going to get a bond, the rates are going down, it's a good time to do it. I was reading today how the rates are going down for bonding. But we have to have more information. And
Today's
I
not
know,
the end of the conversation. Today's the
wait
start.
just a minute and let
You know-
me finish. I gave you your respect. Give it to me.
All right, you're right.
I could think of no better time to have a bond issue with the rates going of what they are. But you pledge your vocal support on the Facilities Committee and the time that they did put in and the professionalism that we have on that committee. I can agree with you. But let's go back and let's look at what are the mandates from state. Do we have a grandfather clause in there? You know, we got more rules in this state than any other state in the union to be so small. And legislation just fly up there like a bird going from one tree to the other. But I think we need to do the due diligence. And it is now November, and at the rate of unemployment and contractors being out of work, I don't hesitate to think that we couldn't get somebody to do it. But I have a problem with signing on to something. Let's see if the schools, and look at the charter, because when we can't use a school, Linda, you brought that idea to my mind. You give it back to the town, like we did Wickford. So that idea was brought back. So it's a lot out there concerning that money and that amount of money. So I'm listening at all of you, and then when voting time comes, I figure I'm going to do what's best. And that's all I can do if you let me finish. Thank you so much.
Mr. Thompson.
I think we're wasting our time going through this process leading to a bond that goes in front of the voters of this town right now, because I don't think we're going to get a positive vote on the bond. We had a vote on somebody's already mentioned, the athletic field. That was voted down by 65%. There was another vote that was taken for giving the schools an extra $500,000. That was voted down by 77%. I asked the town council, how much is it costing you to put out this extra vote? How much is the whole process? And I was told $12,000. So if they're going to charge us to go out for an extra bond, I think we're just wasting our money. We're wasting $12,000 or $15,000 or whatever it's going to cost in order to get the townspeople. They realize that if they go in that voting booth and it says, do you want to spend $6 million on a bond, they have learned and they understand that the next time budget season comes around, that's 20 years on $6 million, just on the principal alone is $300,000. And add on the interest, maybe it's $400,000. that money comes out of your property taxes before they fund the town, the library, and the schools. So what you're saying is, in effect, we're going to take $400,000, either we're going to raise taxes or we're going to take that money away from the schools. And I don't think I want to do either one. Now, I don't know which way to go on this, because I know that roof needs to be fixed, and I want to see it fixed. And I understand that we have money that's just been sitting there from an old, previous bond. So I'd be in favor of doing that. And I'm definitely in favor of what Mr. Mudge has suggested, that we go out immediately with an RFP and get a legitimate contractor, a legitimate price, maybe get 5 to 10, honest bids on this thing, and find the lowest responsive bidder and be ready to go when we can figure out how to fund this. But going to the townspeople and asking them to accept a bond in this economic climate in North Kingstown, I think it's a waste of time and money.
Mrs. Avanzato.
I think we need every option possible on the table. If we say that this bond isn't going to pass, then it certainly isn't going to pass. If we, the school committee, can't get behind getting a bond to repair our school buildings, then no one's going to get behind it. I would like to have every option open. I would prefer to be able to use the $2 million, obviously. And I would prefer the town council to give us money out of their rainy day fund. But do you think they're going to do that? We got zero the last 3 years.
Well,
Years or whatever. It's not going to happen.
but I think that's the process that we have to go
Let
through.
Mrs. Avanzato finish.
So I think we have to talk to them, but I think we need to get all of the options on the table. And I'm not suggesting, Bill, that we leave alone those few items that we need. I don't think this bond is way over. It's not way over what we need. There's maybe a few things in here that could be whittled away, not many, because they worked long and hard hours to get it whittled down pretty darn close to exactly what we need. And of course, when you bond, they build all these contingencies in. It's required, and it's kind of ridiculous, but that's how it works.
Well, I'd like to see us get a sense and talk to if we can't sell it to, again, I'm going to put myself in position that, hey, I'm on the town council. I know what I know in the past has happened and all these other things. What am I going to ask from the school committee, in terms of getting my support on the council to support this? And I'm going to ask these same hard questions, and I hope the council does.
They know what we've been doing. The
Well,
council's
I
aware
understand.
of what the
I'm going to let
facility
Dr.
committee-
Ajay jump in.
And that's what I'm trying to address, that we need to be able to give good, responsible answers to the town council, and we should agree on those, okay?
Now, I feel we do have responsible answers for the town council. When somebody, I appreciate the comments being made. I agree. It's a tough time to ask for people to vote for $6.4 million. I get that. And that's part of the reason why it is a $6.4 million bond. As you know, we were going down the road of something much larger. And the state said, we're not doing that anymore, so anything you put in front of us has got to be, ADA and imminent safety issues. Now, okay, if the town should ask, have you had people look at this? Have you had knowledgeable people from the town take a close look at this and make a good recommendation? Yes, we have. Have you, the school committee, approved of that recommendation to be sent to the Board of Regents? Yes, we have. Okay? We got what we asked for. They approved it. And we're, the school committee, going to come back and say, thank you, Facility Subcommittee, for doing all that work. Thank you, Board of Regents, for considering our proposal and going through that whole process. But no thanks. We don't want to do it anymore.
You're
come on.
You're distorting the process.
No. That is the process. That's the process, Bill. That's it.
Mrs. Avanzano is absolutely correct.
Right?
You're telling me that we need to spend $500,000 on Davis and Miller? Are you telling me we need to do that in sanitary?
I'm not telling you, Bill. The Facility Subcommittee told you.
No, because
and
they didn't.
We asked them to tell us what.
Dr. Ajay has the floor.
We asked the Facility Subcommittee to give us a recommendation. They gave us one. We approved it. This committee approved their recommendation. It went to the Board of Regents. It's a simple process to me.
I'm telling you, you're wrong.
Okay?
And I'm telling you that they didn't look at the legal aspects. They looked at the need, but not the mandatory.
Dr. Auger has the floor.
Agree till the cows come home. I've said what I had to say. I hope that you'll support this tonight.
Absolutely not.
Because, you know, I feel that it is absolutely ridiculous that we would not.
You haven't done your homework, Dr.
We
Auger.
have done our homework. We've
have
done
not.
everything we were supposed to do for a bond, and this is a good cause. We need this stuff, especially that roof.
Point of
So,
order.
I fully support the roof.
What's your point of order?
well, then you should vote for the bond.
No, if I vote for $2 million roof,
Yeah,
I should
you have a
spend $6 million?
Call the question.
All right, so I'd like to say something here, too. One of the things that we
Point of
need
order,
to...
call the question and take a vote.
There's no motion. So, one of the things we need to remember is, by doing our due diligence, we ought to ask the voters if 30% would be something they'd like to get back.
Let's ask
I mean,
the
no matter
voters.
what, we're paying for the roof.
Yeah,
Whether
money,
it comes
too.
out of
That's state.
our money, whether it comes out of the bond, or whether the town puts it in. We're paying for a roof.
We're
A
not
roof that is
disagreeing
going to
on the
fall
roof.
in.
We're not disagreeing
So,
about the roof.
At the same time, it's the matter of who pays for it. And it's going to come out of taxpayer dollars. So it's just a matter of then, do you want 30% back? And that's what you go with the bond?
It's not the
Or
issue.
That's our taxes.
do you get it from the
$10
town?
million.
If they're willing to give it, or, you know, right now, RIDE has already told us that the bond that we had a couple years ago, we cannot use that for Davisville Middle. So, that is not an issue. They've said we can't use it. So, that's why we have to look at something else.
Okay,
So-
the bond, the roof is $2 to $3 million. I'm speaking about the other $3 million or $4 million. We need to get a handle on that. I am not questioning the roof.
Those are good questions, Bill, and they needed to be asked to the Facilities Subcommittee when they made their proposal to us.
When I went to the meeting, I did.
Okay, if you were around then and asking those questions, that was the right time. The school committee had every opportunity to ask those questions. They asked a lot of questions to that committee, and then they approved of the bond going forward.
I have a question
This
that might
group
help.
approved it. Why wouldn't we approve this at this point?
Okay, I'm going to recognize Mrs. Avanzato.
I have a question. Mary Ann, I don't know if you can answer this question. If we vote to approve this tonight, does it preclude us from going back and asking about particular items that may be included in what they're calling mandatory health and safety? Can we tell them that we have a couple items that we have some concerns or doubts about, and can they perhaps agree with us and not do those? I mean, we don't have to spend all the money just because we bond it.
All you're doing tonight...
Can we do that?
Yes. All you're doing tonight is you're not approving the bond tonight. You're simply asking the town council to submit it for enabling legislation. That's all you're doing. And you're asking for the total right now of up to $6.46 million. If you don't need or you don't want all of it, you can lower the amount. But if you don't push this forward, one of the problems you're going to have is you're going to miss the 6-month window. So you're not approving this bond tonight. You're not even approving the figure tonight. You're asking the town council to push it forward so that we can get approval to put it on a bond.
Thank you, Mary
So my
Ann.
recommendation is, you're not approving it. But if you fail to push it forward, you can always stop it at some point. But if you fail to push it forward, you're going to miss the 6 months, and you're going to lose the 30%.
Okay, I want to make one comment. My vote for this, and I'm not adding this to the motion, I'm just saying,
There's
I'm
no
going to,
motion, she said.
yeah, there's a motion.
What is the motion?
What is the motion?
There's a motion on the floor to approve.
Approve what?
Sending
5A1?
Sending this to the town council with a letter.
Is it 5A1?
Yes, it's the
For
agenda item.
$6.4 million.
Request of the North Kingstown Town Council submit enabling legislation for passage to place a question before the voters, the amount of $6.460627 for the purpose of funding the capital improvement program as approved by RIDE on 11/3/2011. Right on your packet.
And again, I am committed personally to going back to the Facilities Management Subcommittee and having them ask the architect about the several items that I have concerns about. And I'm not going to leave that there. I'm not going to leave that there because I want to ask those questions. But I'm going to vote yes on this because we need to move it forward. I hope other members will consider doing that.
Mr. Draper.
I'd like to bring to the committee's attention hopefully a point of clarity regarding process. This will enable us to receive the bond funding. And what I would share with the committee is what we've done for process in the past, and I would use the $9 million bond, which Mr. Mudge referred to. When I got here in 2007, we've been through a variety of funding of projects against that bond. We have not spent the full amount. And I would also remind the committee, we do come before you when each portion of that project is completed with a bid. We come before the committee, you approve it. That in turn goes to the town council. They approve it. That process was used for each project we went through. So there are, for analogy's purposes, 3 bites at the apple. One going to the voters, then again to the school committee, then again to the town council for each portion of the project. I can tell you, my intent would be relative to the roof. We have the U.S. communities, we have an RFP process, we have a couple of different venues available to us that we can try to get pricing on this as soon as possible. That can be going on concurrent with this bond process, but we do have to go before you. So I want to assure the committee that approving the bond process does not bind you to spending all of that $6.5 million. We still have to award contracts on each portion of what we're doing here.
Move the question.
Mrs. Benson?
Don't let it be such a chore to call my name. Mr. Draper, you brought out a very, very interesting fact. The last bond before this one, when you came, you gave the date, was that we had over-asked for money for that particular bond. That was my first years on the school committee. I did a lot of legwork to find out that whatever you say you're going to do with bonding money, you have to do that. I researched that, and I don't
use it for something else, but you can't. You don't have to do all of it. You decide
That's why we were able, and that led up to many other scenarios. But why can't we get the RFPs, accept what the facility committee said, but don't go and vote to spend money on their recommendations? Not a person sitting on that facility committee has got to answer to anyone in this town. And I am absolutely appalled at how people do not support our bond issues. Let's do our due diligence before we go. What is most embarrassing? To have someone not to support it or take the recommendations of the facility committee? So that's my question. And I move the question. Let's take a vote.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
What is this, in favor of moving the question?
Moving the question.
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make an amendment.
No, I take a roll call vote, please.
Hold off for another week, another meeting.
Well, all you're doing right now is moving the question. That's what you're voting on right now.
This is a vote to move the question.
And you have to vote that before, according to Robert Rules of Order.
That's what I asked for, a roll call vote.
To move the question, William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Bill Boyd Benson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Now we get to the motion.
Make the motion.
The motion's on the... Okay.
But with respect to the
Could you
motion,
read the motion again, please?
Okay, the original motion was made by Linda Avanzado, seconded by Kim Page, to approve the bond, although I would like to read, the item is actually, we're not approving the bond. We're approving 5A1. So can I read the bond authorization?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait just a minute. Point of order.
No, this is what
I
the
don't think
motion
that's
is.
your duty, Madam Secretary, to decide.
No, I'm asking her to read the motion. And
What is the motion?
that's what she's going to read. Go
Okay,
ahead.
that's all I want to hear, not the side points.
The North Kingstown School Committee requests the North Kingstown Town Council submit enabling legislation for passage to place a question before the voters in the amount of $6,460,627 for the purpose of the funding the capital improvement plan program as approved by RIDE on November 3rd, 2011. There was also, in addition to this, to send communication to the Town Council with a letter. That was the original motion by Linda Avanzado.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Questions?
No.
I mean, no.
Because you're moving the question.
We
You've already
moved the
voted to move
question,
it.
so
There's no more
now
question.
we do the question.
No,
The
no.
question is,
Yes. No, there's no question.
William Mudge.
No, and there's too many questions that Sylvia asked. Like, when does this have to be to the state?
Your answer was no.
When do
Next
we have to
person.
give this answer to the state?
Billy Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Elroy Benson.
I will vote, and will vote appropriately, if I have the understanding of when we have to give the question to the state. And I think nobody can answer that but Dr. O'J.
We've already gone to the state and got approval from the Board of Regents.
Yes, and I was very pleased that they approved it.
And now you have 6 months to get voter approval in order to make these, to make these changes, to spend this money. So you only have 6 months for the process.
And what the process we're going through now?
All you're doing
Bear with
now-
me, I'm not an attorney, neither am I an architect.
But you are also, but you were a General Assembly person, and if you
Yes,
remember
and I
when
know.
we sat in the House, town councils would ask us to put bills in front of the General Assembly for certain
Absolutely.
things. All you're voting on tonight is to ask the town council to give it to the General Assembly to pass the enabling legislation for North Kingstown to put this on a bond for voter approval. That's all you're doing right now.
Thank you. And it has been a lot of talk back and forth about us paying for the bond. I remember the General Assembly, and you were there during my time.
Correct.
You have to get approval from the General Assembly.
To put it on a referendum in
To
your
put
town.
it on a
That's what you're
referendum.
voting on for tonight, to ask the town council to do that.
And we have to
The
have
delay
a
this-
council letter with it
Correct.
for it to go through the General Assembly.
Correct.
2 weeks is going to buy.
But my concern is the amount.
Well, right now, you're asking for,
No, we can't split it up, Madam Attorney. I didn't go to Yale nor Harvard,
I
nor
don't
New
understand your
England.
question about amount, Mrs. Benson.
The amount that you're going to put on the letter that you send the town council.
We're going to put the amount that the Board of Regents approved, the $6.4 million. But
Do
that
you
doesn't
think we
necessarily...
have to put that amount on there? Don't you think we should do our due diligence
We put
on
this
that
off for 2
amount?
weeks.
I'm asking your legal opinion.
My legal opinion is you have to
With
ask,
all of your credentials
Right.
online.
you've gone to the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents has approved this amount to reimburse you 30%. You put it on you ask the town council to send it to the General Assembly.
Yes.
And then this would go on a referendum. If you don't need to spend that amount of money,
We'll
when it goes
have
out to bid,
$2,000
you
left.
don't spend it.
We'll have 2,000 left like we did from the last
Then,
bond
you may
issue.
not, you may have that money and you won't spend it.
And my concern is, why put ourselves out when we don't know the exact price?
You're never going to know the exact price until you get it approved and bid it.
That's why all those contingencies are in here. Anything could happen. They could go up on that roof and have to take something out. We don't know.
No, nothing is sudden, but nothing is set for death and taxes.
Lots of times, voters approve an amount, and it's either too high or too low.
Comes in higher.
If you remember, a district in the state put a bond out for a new school,
Yes.
and all of the bids came $4 million higher, and now they're trying to cut it down. So you're never going to know the exact amount.
That
until
I
after-
know. I'm not the dumbest person in the state of Rhode Island.
But what I'm saying to you, Mrs. Benson, you're never going to know the exact amount, and this is the
Okay.
best estimate from the
Okay.
architect
That's a
and the
good
facilities.
conversation to have, I think. I
that
appreciate the
was good.
clarification.
and I needed clarification. And with my clarification and the economic conditions that we are faced with now, please, no.
Motion fails.
Move to adjourn.
I think we need to
We
bring
still
this
have
up
things
again.
on our agenda. We do not have time. We still have many things on our agenda here that we have not been completed. So,
I thought we were going to executive meeting.
well,
Aren't we going
you
to
know,
have executive
we
meeting?
may have executive session, but right now, you need to get through some of the other stuff on the agenda.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
We need some of these things.
You know, I mean, you have some
Let's
policy
listen at the
issues.
superintendent. We
The
entrusted
superintendent
him.
has asked that we remove item C, the maintenance reorganization plan. He has asked to table that.
There's a motion over here to adjourn. It was seconded.
I would ask this committee.
Fine.
No,
Okay,
point of
we'll take a
order,
vote.
Madam Chair. I would ask this committee, particularly people who talk a long time at this table, to at least allow the superintendent to get whatever necessary items he needs prior to the next meeting very quickly, and we can get out of here in 10 minutes. I mean,
But you have to vote the motion down, because there
Right,
is a
we have to
motion on
vote
the floor
motion
that's
down.
been made
So
and
all those
seconded.
in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, or all those opposed say no?
No.
No. Mrs. Benson, how do you vote?
She don't
I'm
have
not
to.
voting.
motion to adjourn.
No, she don't have to. It
Okay,
didn't
the
carry.
motion fails,
Failed.
and
Motion fails.
so here we go on. Dr. Ajay, what are the things that you need?
There are only two items, B and D, the maintenance truck replacement and Davisville Elementary. They've both been on our list for, the maintenance truck has been there for about 2 months, as far as I know, and Davisville Elementary, this is the third meeting for that. The truck is something that we absolutely need. I know there are concerns, particularly from Mr. Thompson, about, as he's mentioned, the need, the desire to consolidate. This is something that we have talked about with the town. The town recommends that we get it. They have also just gotten some trucks, and they understand that when this truck is done taking care of our own grounds, particularly in snow, that it helps the town. So it's kind of a consolidation move already in that respect. There's a lot of cooperation.
Don't put it so one sir.
There's a lot of cooperation between the town and the school department on snow plowing, and I think that's been the one thing that's kind of held this up. Mr. Welch had some issues about leasing and all that sort of thing. Our recommendation is to go ahead with the purchase. We feel that is more, it's just a better deal overall. In the long term, we save a lot of money. This is a regular thing that we do. We need this truck, and I hope that you'll support it. I don't know, Ned, if you have any other thing to add on this?
It's, from an age standpoint, we're dealing with the
You
same,
could have your attention, folks. Appreciate it.
from an age standpoint, we're dealing with the same vintage, a lot less miles, but the same vintage we were dealing with the buses. It's just an asset that's run into the end of its useful life, and it's time to replace it.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the truck and a second?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second? I'll give the second.
I'll
Okay.
second this for discussion purposes.
All right.
Discussion.
Say, now there's discussion. Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Benson.
This is just more motivation for us not to consolidate the building and ground maintenance, and it's another expense of probably about $40,000 when we get through, and we're always looking for $40,000. I have not seen a written document where the town recommended that we would buy this truck, but maybe there is such thing. I haven't seen it, and I'm going to vote no. That's it.
Mrs. Benson.
I was of the opinion, until I did my due diligence, there's more in facial expressions than anything I can say, and I'm watching them. But what I would like to say, the truck is needed. One thing I would like to add, since you permitted to go in the letter that Mrs. Avezzano, and I agreed with it, that we still have the agreement that we work together, and this truck will work to do the streets because we do not have a sand and salt spreader. And my vote...
Back that out.
Okay, Mrs. Benson has the floor.
And I would like to ask Mr. Draper or the superintendent, do we have a sand and salt spreader?
We have one small sander that we can use for minor treatment, but we can't handle any large
Parking
parking
lots.
lots. No, we call in the town if we get into an icing event or something like that. We don't have the equipment to handle that sort of thing.
So you bring in another question because you gave me too much of an answer. The next question is, I was trying to go for the truck. You said we called the town. How do we have a sander and a salt spreader that's large enough to take care of the parking lots at the schools and where the buses stop?
I'll just answer simply,
You don't have it. You either have a salt spreader.
Well, our recommendation is to get this so that we have what we need to do that kind of work. So we don't. We don't have what we
So the truck is going to
need.
be in a position to spread the sand and salt over the parking lots.
no. Look, I'm not going to,
I don't want to get in a... I'm going to tell you what kind of contest it is. Because you all shoot the messenger.
Let us answer, okay?
Okay, I'll let you answer. Give a good one.
we have the ability to spread sand and salt. We do that with a small truck. As far as the use of this truck, I have tried to explain to the committee, in writing and what was provided, that this truck is not used solely for snow removal. I think there's an over-reliance on it being just dependent upon snow removal. That is one small portion of what this asset does. It carries tools, it responds to maintenance needs, it's used throughout the district for a variety of different things. Plowing some town roads during a snow event is just one small portion of what it's used for. I understand if the committee does not want us to have that asset, that's completely at the committee's discretion. What we're telling you is we need this asset.
Mrs. Avanzato.
I just want to point out that we need to be able to operate the school department, and we don't look to the town to tell us what to do for every
Not
purchase.
at all.
I mean, they just bought a truck over there at the town. They haven't cut their budget 3 years in a row. I can make a lot of comments on what they do and what we do, but I let them do what they do, and I let us do what we do. And I don't think we need to ask for every purchase that we do. It looks like we had a conversation, an extensive conversation, I mean, by us, I mean the school department, with Mr. Bergeron about this issue, and the North Kingstown Department of Public Works made it clear that they are focused upon roadways and access for public safety, and they're not able to plow schools, and they're not able to respond to our needs as we may need them. In order for us to consolidate or look at that, we're going to need both sides to cooperate, and at some point, I think we're going to be looking at doing more of that. But again, when we need the truck, the school department needs the truck. I don't think we need to wait for the town to say, okay.
Yeah, I got the impression from Mr. Bergeron's letter that he welcomed, that us having the truck gave an opportunity for us to be able to work together.
Yes.
That they use this truck that we have for things, and we use it, they help us out. So, you know, it's a sort of thing of, as a town sort of resource,
You don't
this
have to
helps both of
convince
us. Okay, let's go ahead and take our vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have one question.
One
to ask.
question.
I did not need convincing that we needed a truck, but I didn't get the proper answer about spreading the sand and the salt. So I want you to bear that in mind.
Okay, Lorene, roll call vote.
Kimberly Page,
Yes.
Joe Thompson,
No.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson,
No,
William Mudge.
No.
Motion fails 2-3.
That's great.
isn't it great that we got something done?
Thanks for your support.
All right, are we going to move forward with the for the superintendent to have a detailed plan of Davisville Elementary?
It's too late, in my opinion.
Did the committee wish?
This is something that I didn't get a sense that anyone didn't have any support for. All this is asking is that I can make a presentation to you on January 10th to give you a more detailed proposal on Davisville Elementary. That's all I'm asking for.
So move.
Comment, is that
Second.
going to affect your ability to put out the school budget? Because this can go on, if you need more time, then you should take more time for the presentations, I guess what I'm saying. Shouldn't be rushed into having to go to the 10th if resources are needed to put out the budget. So you make the call, and I'll support.
One way or another, I'm going to come out with a budget. I don't know to what extent. I don't think I would be that far along with, that many details with rock-solid proposal exactly how much this would cost, but we would probably give it a budget estimate anyway.
Well, I'm talking about the school budget. You got to put that out, I think, in the 12th.
And it would be kind of a provisional thing, that, that if, as of January 10th, our thinking is that we would, do the following and you get your support on that, we would, include that in the budget at that point.
Well,
Mrs. Avanzato?
Just a very, very brief comment. I would just ask Dr. Auger to put emphasis on, this is kind of obvious, any programs that may be able to bring revenue to the district. And the more of those we can have in there, and the fewer of the tenants that we don't receive revenue from, the better. I just wanted to see that.
I agree. As we said in the presentation, we're looking for, school department-related services, things that we can save money on, and anything that is not from the school department would be, very closely related to the mission of the COSI program. And we would be looking for revenue to come from that, so that at some point we could be at a point where that is a self-sustaining building, that the revenue taken in takes care of it, and we don't have to worry about it within our budget in that respect.
May I make a point?
Yes.
Dr. J, in working on the budget, I guess you know that all of those requirements for the lunch program, and not this
Lunch program?
Yes, for the lunch program, that was shot down on a federal level. Like we have to have this and that for the lunches and this, that, and the other. That was shot down on the federal level. So, in making your budget,
All right.
I didn't finish. I was waiting for the conversation on the end.
Okay, please ask your
That's
question.
all I had to ask, that we make sure, because you were right, we need to deliver a proper education to the school. I think the code name is FRAP, isn't it? Or something of that sort. So let's look into all the things that we don't have to do and get us a good budget, something that I can knock on the doors and get people to the polls to support.
Dr. Auger, we could do this presentation on the week. I believe that the budget is being done on the 10th, but I believe that we have, it's at the 17th, that we have as a meeting date, but we weren't going to do the budget. So that presentation, do you need a vote from this committee to do that?
Madam Chair, I don't think he needs a vote. So that's, he can make a presentation anytime he wants to make a presentation.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Don't restrict him. We gave you
I'm just
enough.
concerned that we don't force something on you and you don't have time enough to do it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mrs. Avanzato.
We are nutheads.
Yeah, because we've had them on the agenda maybe 3 or 4 times, I just wanted to make a motion to pass the policies that we've already gone over. That would be E2, 3, and 4. The agenda, the animals policy, the assignment of students to schools, and the district parent involvement policy.
I would second that.
Well, you better split them up.
you have one, Mr. Thompson, that you don't like?
Service animals. You're going to set that in stone? Is that what this vote would do?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so the motion on the floor. Lorraine could take a roll call vote.
Are you going to extract that so we
I
can
recommend
vote
we do.
separately?
If you got a comment, let's do them
A comment.
individually.
What's the problem with the policy?
I would like to go to the teachers or the teachers' elected representatives and...
It's not.
by law.
It's by
It's
law.
ADA.
We're basically saying,
I'm sorry, I don't think I got to the end of that. I'd like to go to the teachers or the teachers' representatives and find out if they have any problems, questions, suggestions, additions, or subtractions to what we've got as language in here. I don't believe we've done that. I think the teachers are going to be at the front line of dealing with that very policy, and I believe that they're the only ones that haven't come to us with any kind of that have not been asked and have not come forward with any kind of recommendation. I don't think we should put this policy into final cement until we hear.
remember.
I think that's very short-sighted to not get teachers' input on this particular policy.
Remember, the policy allows the teachers to basically say, this animal is a problem. So it gives them the purpose, or I should say the means, to be able to deal with it and to be able to say...
I'd like to ask you to just bring that forward as a vote, up or down. If you want to vote it up, pass it without any teacher input to that policy, that's fine. I'm going to vote against it.
I believe we did have it, our policies are usually taken before the admin council, and I believe that the admin council has had no problems with this policy, and they're the
I don't think
principals who-
that's correct. I'm sorry. I would like to hear something specifically from the teachers or their representatives.
Could we do each one, please? I recommend we
Sure.
do each one, please.
You want to, I'll withdraw my second. We can do each one separately.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
I see the director of special education still there.
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
And,
Yeah.
There has been some information in our professional magazines that hit upon this and the use it would be for her. And, cutting down the expense in special ed. Bear with me. I do my reading. I'm sorry if you don't have time to read the professional magazines.
I'm agreeing with you. The policy came from Rachel.
But I do think there's going to be an extreme case. Somebody's going to bring a pony there.
Move to adjourn.
Somebody's going to
Second.
bring a pony there.
Call the question.
Motion to adjourn. There's no question on the floor. I withdrew my motion. There's a motion to adjourn in a second.
I'll third it.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 No, please note that I didn't.
Okay, are we adjourning to executive session? No. Okay, so we're adjourning the meeting. Thank you very much.